Okay, so we come to page 96, and we, just to reiterate, so the Brahmins, the local caste Brahmanas, they've been inspired, and they're all very qualified Brahmanas in their respective positions as Brahmanas. This Chudamani, he's preached and delivered lectures all over India, and he's been given so many allocates, and he's an expert speaker, this Chudamani. The names are all very interesting. It's described in the study guide that we sent around. All the different names are analyzed. So they're all very qualified Brahmins, and they've come to challenge the simple hearted Vaishnavas who didn't want to challenge them, but then the Mahajans were being insulted, so to speak, by the Brahmins. So the Vaishnavas, they felt impelled to defend the honor of the Mahajans. So now they've come into the arena of this debate. And it's a beautiful arena. And I hope one day some artist will actually paint it. There's something like 200, 100 or so Vaishnavas and students have come to listen. And there's about 100 Brahmanas on the other side. So it's a big assembly of about 300 people, and a glorious setting in Godram where Vaishnava Das will speak these beautiful truths to the Brahman questions. So we can start from the top of page 96.
No, yeah.
No.
The last but one para. Vaishnava Das took the dust.
Okay. Yes. Yes, Lahari is explaining to the Vaishnavas that it was Devi Das's disturbed mind that brought all these Brahmanas to challenge them, because he couldn't climb over his identity as a Brahmin, and how could these Muslims come into the assembly of Brahmanas? This is why this debate has been ignited. So Vaishnav Das took the dust of Paramahamsa Babaji's feet on his head and said, I shall bear the order of the Vaishnavas upon my head. Today the knowledge that I have imbibed must certainly bear fruit. By this time the sky was clear. A broad sitting place was spread out in the Malati Madhavi grove, and the Brahmana Pandits sat on one side and the Vaishnavas on the other. All the Brahmanas and Pandits of Sri Godrum and Madhyadweep had been called there, and many neighboring students and scholarly Brahmanas also joined the assembly. So it was by no means a small gathering. About 100 Brahman Pandits were seated on one side and about 200 Vaishnavas on the other. So this was the description of the painting that one day will manifest. Vaishnava Das Babaji, calm and composed. Of course he's calm and composed because he's going to have an opportunity to speak about Krishna. This is the greatest calming effect for the consciousness, because when we're speaking about Krishna, it's the transcendental aspect of the that individual which is going to manifest in speaking Harikatha. It's the purpose, it's our function in life. Calm and composed, sat at the head of the assembly by the request of the Vaishnavas. Just then an astonishing incident occurred. A cluster of malati flowers fell on Vaishnav Das's head from the vines above. This enlivened the Vaishnavas, inspiring them to utter the name of Hari loudly. This is to be understood as the mercy of Sriman Mahaprabhu, they declared. Of course, how wonderful. On the other side, Krishna Chudamani grimaced and said, grimaced means he scowled, he was unhappy, and said, you may think that, but flowers will not do. The tree shall be known by its fruit. So he's automatically showing an envious spirit, actually, and it's going to increase as we go through. Dismissing the matter, Vaishnava Das began. This meeting that is taking place in Navadvip today resembles the assemblies which take place in Varanasi, and this is a cause of great happiness for me. Although I am a resident of Bengal, I spent many years studying and lecturing in Varanasi and other places, so I am not so accustomed to speaking in Bengali. It is my request that in today's assembly the questions and answers be made in Sanskrit. Chudamani had studied the Shastra very, very diligently, but he could not speak Sanskrit fluently. Apart from some shlokas that he had committed to memory, he was somewhat dismayed by Vaishnav Das's proposal and said, "Why, we are meeting in Bengal, so it is best to speak in Bengali. I cannot speak Sanskrit like the pundits of the western provinces." Everyone could understand, by observing their respective moods, that Chudamani was becoming fearful of debating with Vaishnava Das. From the very beginning, the flowers have fallen on Vaishnava's head, and he was unhappy to say that, and he responded in a negative way. And now he's becoming somewhat intimidated from the very. Why? Because he hasn't come to inquire about transcendental truth, he's come to challenge the transcendental truth. And because of that challenge, he must be defeated because the transcendental truth will hold true. But his envy will try to cover that over. Because envy and pride, we discussed yesterday, they're synonymous, pride and envy. If someone is proud of their learning, they are naturally envious of others who think they may be able to defeat them. So this is manifest, the two traits, the two qualities of pride and envy. Everyone could understand by observing their respective moods that Chudamani was becoming fearful of debating with Vaishnavadas. They all requested Vaishnavadas to speak in Bengali, and he agreed. Chudamani raised the first objection. This is how in assemblies you conduct it. There's first of all an objection, and then that has to be purified. If we read any Bhasya, the Govinda Bhasya, for example, it's all presented in the same way. There's first objection, and then there's purification of that objection or answer to that objection. Question and answer, in other words. So he's asking, is jati or caste nitya, invariable? Are the Hindus and Muslims not different castes? Do the Hindus not become fallen by associating with the Muslims? So we should understand historically, also in context, that previously it's described that the Greeks invaded India prior to the Muslims, and they were actually called the Yavanas, but they were in a class of their own. The Yavanas, they were distinct. And then the Mughals, the Muslims, they invaded. And then the British Raj, they also invaded. So these are termed as Yavanas, these groups, because they're not Aryan, they're not originally Indian. So these are inferior groups of invaders and so on. So from that, for 10,000 years, historically, not 10,000 years, 5,000 years, historically, this mood has been that these inferior castes have actually come into India and have not supported India, but actually tried to take from India, to invade, to take goods. Alexander the Great was the one representing the Greeks. So they just tried to plunder. The Muslims, they actually lived here, but they also plundered the hearts of the Aryan people simultaneously. So Chudamani is asking this deep question about jati and caste. Vaishnava Das Babaji replied, according to the Nyaya Shastra, jati, a term that refers to race, caste, or species, is invariable. However, the term jati bhed, caste distinction, mentioned there does not refer to the difference of caste among human beings.
Born in
Huh? Among human beings, born in different countries. This term refers to the difference of species, such as that which is found between cows, goats, and human beings. So this jati is not to be applied to the human species. It's actually for the animal species, but they've twisted it and brought it around to the human species. Chudamani says, yes, what you say is quite true. So Chudamani understands the scripture and he has agreed with that. But does that mean that there is no jati-bhed caste distinction between Hindus and Muslims? He wants to get to the root of this. Vaishnava Das said, yes, there is a distinction between the castes, but that type of jati is not eternal. This is the whole point through here, that he's trying to impress Chudamani on what is nitya and what is naimitic. This is the whole principle. Human beings have only one jati, which in this case means species. Within the human species, many different jati or castes have been invented according to time and tradition, etc., based on the different language, country, styles of dress, and skin color. These are all inventions, but it's not applicable to the Nitya-dharma of the soul. Chudamani, is there no difference in terms of birth, or does the difference between Hindus and Muslims consist of nothing more than the difference in clothing and other such things? Because that's what Vaishnava suggested. Vaishnava does. Jivas are born into higher and lower varnas, castes, according to their previous karma. According to their previous karma. And in congruity with their varnas, they are eligible for different types of work, according to their karma. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras are the four varnas. All others are antyaja, which means that they are low-born and outside the caste system. So for most of the Western followers here, we are all antyaja, and we can take many lessons from this and not try to impose our desires to break social etiquette, where it's considered, for example, in the Jagannath Puri Mandir, it's only Hindus who go in there. The devotees should never, ever, even in their dreams, object to this. We are in different bodies. We were born as Antyaja, but we have come off that bodily conception and we're practicing Vaishnavism. Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Haridas Thakur, they did not go into the Jagannath temple. So we are in very good company. This is the company that we have. Chudamani, are the Muslims not outcast? Vaishnava, yes, according to the Shastra, they are outside the jurisdiction of the four Varnas, Antyaja. They kill cows. Chudamani, then how can Muslims be Vaishnavas and how can respectable Vaishnavas associate with them? Beautiful questions. Vaishnava does. Vaishnavas are those who have pure bhakti, and all human beings are candidates for Vaishnava Dharma. Muslims are not eligible to perform the duties prescribed for the different varnas or the varnashram system because their birth disqualifies them. However, they have every right to participate in practices of bhakti, just like Haridas Thakur. One can never say that he knows the actual purport of the Shastras until he has minutely examined the subtle differences between Karmakand, Gyankand, and Bhaktikand. We've come to the same ladder, the same yoga ladder that was discussed in the second chapter, the third chapter, the fourth chapter, and now this chapter. This Karmakand, Gyankand, and Bhaktikand. Chudamani, very well. When one performs one's prescribed karma, the heart is gradually purified so that it becomes eligible for gyan. Amongst the gyanis, some are nirbhed Brahmavadis, who advocate the undifferentiated impersonal Brahm, while others are Vaishnavas who accept the personal form of Bhagavan, possessing transcendental attributes, Savisheshvad. Sa Visheshu. Vishesh means dress, and Sa means with, so with form. That's the etymology of that word. According to this progression, one cannot become a Vaishnav without first completing one's eligibility for karma. So he's going through the material stages as if it's all coming from birth. He's not seeing from the transcendental vision. Within first completing one's eligibility for karma. Muslims are not eligible even to perform the prescribed karma within the Varnashram system because they are outcasts. So, how can they become eligible for bhakti? Logical, very logical, rational questions. Vaishnavadas, outcast human beings have every right to practice bhakti. He's coming in very strongly here. This is his point. All the Shastras accept this, and Bhagavan himself has stated this in Srimad Bhagavatam 9:32.
Bhagavad Gita.
Sorry, Srimad Bhagavad Gita 9:32. You can
मां हि पात व्यासपश्रितया येऽपि सूयपापयोनयः स्त्रियो वैश्यस्तथा शूद्रस्तेऽपि यान्ति परां गतिम्.
O Parita, women, Vaishyas, Shudras, and low-born people who have taken birth in sinful families can attain the supreme destination by taking shelter of me. This is powerful praman. We should know where this is in our Jaiva Dharma so we can produce it when necessary. Here the word ashrita, taking shelter, refers to bhakti. This is corroborated in the Skanda Purana, Kashikand 2163.
ब्राह्मणक्षत्रियो वैश्यशूद्रो वा यदि वेतारः विष्णुभक्ति समायुक्तो जेन्यः सर्वोत्तमश्च सः.
Quoted in Hari Bhakti Vilas 1006. Whether one is a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, or an outcast, if he has taken shelter of Vishnu Bhakti, he is considered to be superior to all. Actually, this would be sufficient for Devidas if he had faith in the Shastra.
Chudamani.
No, but this I'm thinking about Devidas because Devidas is watching this assembly and he was the one who was most disturbed at heart. He was the one responsible for this assembly actually happening. Chudamani's heart is going to be difficult to change because he's such an elevated Brahmana. How can he give up that status? But Devidas is possible. It is said in the Naradiya Purana,
स्वपचोऽपि महीपाल विष्णुभक्तो द्विजाधिकः विष्णुभक्ति विहीनो यो यतिश्च स्वपचाधिकः.
quoted from Sri Hari Bhakti Vilas 1087. Chudamani, you may give many quotations from Shastra as evidence, but it is important to see what is the underlying principle of this consideration. How can the defect of degraded birth be removed? Can a defect relating to one's birth be removed without taking another birth? Good question. Good question. Vaishnava Das. The defect of a degraded birth is the result of parabdha karma, previous activities that have begun to bear fruit in this life, and this parabdha karma can be destroyed by uttering the name of Bhagavan. The proof of this is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 6.16.44.
यन्नाम सकृच श्रवन्त पुकासोऽपि विमुच्यते संसारात्.
Even a low-born dog-eater can be delivered from material existence simply by hearing your holy name once. So this is such nectar to listen to when Vaishnava Das is responding in such a shastric manner to these allegations. It is also stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 6.2.46. Go ahead.
नातः परं कर्म निबन्धकृतानां मुमुक्षतं तीर्थपादानुकीर्तनात् न यत् पुण्यकर्मसु सजते मनो रजस्तमोभ्यः कलिलं ततो नायतः.
Those who desire liberation from the bondage of material existence have no means of rooting out sin except by the chanting of the holy names of Bhagavan, who sanctifies even the holy places by the mere touch of his lotus feet. The reason is that when one performs Nam Sankirtan, the mind does not become attached to karma again. Whereas when one practices any other means of atonement, the mind is again contaminated by the material qualities of passion and ignorance, since the tendencies to commit sin have not been destroyed at the root. So this is a verse from the Ajamil Charita. So this whole pastime in the 6th canto of Ajamil is demonstrating this. Ajamil was the most sinful wretch, but because he called Narayan, calling even his son at the time of his leaving the body, the 3 Vishnu Dutas arrived. There was 4 Yamadutas because no, there was 3 Yamadutas, I'm sorry, because mind, body, and words were all degraded in the form of Ajamil. So 3 Yamadutas appeared, and 4 Vishnu Dutas appeared because there are 4 syllables in the name Narayana. So because of those 4 syllables, then 4 Vishnu Dutas appeared. So that's a perfect example to explain this point that Vaishnava Das is offering here. Again, in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:33-7, it is stated,
अहोवत स्वपचोतो गरीयान् यज् जावाग्रे वर्तते नाम तुभ्यं तेपस्तापश्चु जुहु सहस्नुर् आर्य ब्रह्मणाचुर्नाम गृणन्ति एते.
so this verse I think is spoken by Kapila Dev to his mother Devahuti. Oh, what more can be said about the greatness of a person who chants the holy name of Sri Hari? A person whose tongue utters your holy names is superior to all, even if he has taken birth in a family of dog-eaters. His Brahminical status has already been established in his previous birth. Those fortunate jivas who chant Sri Harinam, have already undergone austerities, performed fire sacrifices, bathed in the holy places, followed the rules of proper conduct, and thoroughly studied the Vedas. So these facts, when the Antyajas or the Westerners, for example, are hearing these, they should never become proud, thinking, oh, yes, I was a Brahmin in my previous life. This is why I'm actually chanting Hare Krishna, and have the misconception that now they have socially become Brahmanas. They haven't externally become Brahmanas at all. They are always Antyaja. They are always of that lower caste. So this should give impetus for humility in the Antyajas. If the Antyaja actually comes to the path of Kirtanya Sadhari by his humility, then he can be honored properly as a Vaishnava. But if that humility hasn't manifested, then he's still considered to be an Antyaja. So it's this humility which will be the telling distinction, just like with Rupa Goswami, was born actually in such a high class South Indian Brahmin family, and Sanatan also, but they both stayed at the Siddha Bakul with Haridas Thakur, and they didn't try to enter into the Jagannath temple. And the same with Haridas Thakur. He's the Namacharya. Did he ever think that he had some right to enter into the Jagannath temple? He felt it, his whole life, his whole mood was demonstrating abject humility, and Rupa and Sanatan the same. So for us who are outside of the Varnashram system as Antyaja socially, not as Vaishnavas, Vaishnavas, we are Jivas Rupoi Krishna, we are on that platform. Or if we're practicing, we're on that platform as pure Vaishnavas. But in our social condition, we are not, which will be explained through here. Chudamani, then why is it that a Chandala who chants Harinam is barred from performing yagyas and other Brahminical activities? Vaishnavadas, one must take birth in a Brahmin family to perform yagyas and other such activities, and even one who was born in a Brahmin family must be purified by the ceremony of investiture with the sacred thread before he is eligible to perform the duties of a Brahmana. In other words, he has to be purified as a Brahmana. Similarly, a Chandala may become purified by taking up Harinam, but he is still not eligible to perform yagyas until he acquires seminal birth in a Brahmana family. However, he can perform the angas, limbs of bhakti, which are infinitely greater than yagyas. Our purpose is to reach to Krishna. Our object is not to make some activist kind of mission in this world as far as the caste system is concerned. That's not our objective at all. Our objective is internally to connect with the Supreme Lord, my spirit soul to connect with the Supreme Spirit. That's my objective. So whether or not I'm regarded as a Brahman is immaterial. but I should think for my own progress in bhakti that I am not sufficiently qualified for that. That will give me the the impetus to remain in a more humble condition, because this humility actually is the very post, the pillar for the bhakti lata. The bhakti lata bij is bestowed by Guru, that Krishna seva vasana, that desire to serve Krishna. And that creeper has to grow on a pillar. We see all creepers, they don't run on the ground, they grow on a pillar to go higher. So that pillar is Trinadapi Sunichena. That's the pillar of this creeper, of this bhakti lata. So it's growing on that pillar. So if I'm given the opportunity in this life to constantly take the humble position, I should welcome that and embrace it, and never try to think, oh, I'm going to show all these people that I'm not like a fallen Western devotee or something like that, that actually I'm completely submissive, because otherwise you'll never be accepted in Vaishnava circles. Similarly, a Chandala may have become purified by taking up Harinam, but he is still not eligible to perform yagyas until he acquires seminal birth as in a Brahmin family. However, he can perform the angas, limbs of bhakti, which are infinitely greater than yagyas. Yes, the angas of bhakti are connecting with that transcendental object. Chudamani, what kind of conclusion is that? How can a person who is disqualified from an ordinary privilege be qualified for something which is much higher? He can't grasp the distinction between Naimitic and Nitya. He hasn't begun. Is there any conclusive evidence for this? Vaishnava does. There are two types of human activities: material activities that relate to practical existence, vyavaharik, and spiritual activities that relate to the ultimate truth, paramatik. A person may have attained spiritual qualification, but he does not necessarily qualify him for particular material activities. For example, one who is a Muslim by birth may have acquired the nature and all the qualities of a Brahmana, so that he is a Brahmana from the spiritual point of view, but he still remains ineligible for certain material activities, such as marrying the daughter of a Brahmana. You cannot transgress the material social etiquette. It just creates chaos. This etiquette is there for a purpose, and it's a bastion, it's a strong fortress. This Varnashram system was manifested by Krishna himself. It helps if it's guided in the direct focus to achieve pure bhakti. If it's guided in that direction, it can be very supportive. But if it's only exploited by those smarter castes, then it's going to have a negative impact. Chudamani, why is that? What is wrong if he does so? So Chudamani knows this, but he's just wanting to hear Vaishnava Das. Vaishnava Das, if one violates social customs, one is guilty of vyadikari dosh, vyavaharika dosh, secular impropriety. The members of society who take pride in their social respectability do not condone such activities. That is why one should not perform them, even if he is spiritually qualified. Just remain humble like Rupa Goswami, like Haridas Thakur. There's no need to make a big drama about your apparent spiritual qualification. Chudamani, please tell me what is the cause of eligibility for karma and what is the cause of eligibility for bhakti. Vaishnava Das, tat tat karma yogya swabhav janma. Nature, birth, and other such vyavaharik or practical causes that make one suitable for a particular type of work are the sources of eligibility for karma. The source of eligibility for bhakti is tattvika shraddha, faith that is rooted in the absolute truth. These are two distinct paths. The vyavaharik, which is all about the practical, material realm and material karma, and there's the paramatik, or the tattvik shraddha, which pertains to the absolute reality. Wonderful conversation. Chudamani, don't try to intimidate me with the language of Vedanta. Explain clearly what you mean by tat tat karma yogya swabhav. Vaishnavadas. The qualities that are found in the nature of a Brahmana are control of the senses, shama, control of the mind, dham, austerity, tapa, purity, socha, satisfaction, shantosh, forgiveness, shama, simplicity, saralata, devotion to Bhagavan, isha bhakti, mercy, daya, and truthfulness, satya. The natural qualities of a kshatriya are prowess, teja, physical strength, bala, resoluteness, driti, heroism, surya, tolerance, tidiksha, magnanimity, udarata, perseverance, udyama, gravity, dishrata,
Dheerata.
dhirata, devotion to the brahmanas, brahmyata, and opulence, aishwarya. The qualities that characterize the Vaishnavas are theism, astikya, charity, dan, faith, nishta, absence of pride, adambikata, adambikata, and eagerness to accumulate wealth. Artha Trishna describe the Vaishnavas have an insatiable greed for wealth, hunger for wealth. The natural qualities of a Shudra are service to the Brahmins, cows, and celestial deities, Dvija Godeva Seva, and satisfaction with whatever is obtained, Yata Labha Santosh. The qualities in the nature of an Antyaja outcast are uncleanliness, asochiam, dishonesty, mritya, thievery, chorya, atheism, nastika, nashtikata, futile quarreling, ritakala, lust, calm, anger, krodha, and hankering to satisfy one's senses, indriya, trishna. So these are the qualities generally in the Antyaja nations. We can see their insatiable greed and their transgression of all moral etiquette across the board is how they behave. This is a fact of life that we have witnessed. The Shastras prescribe that one varna should be determined according to these different natures. The determination of varna on the basis of birth alone is a recent practice. An individual's inclination for a specific type of work and his expertise in it are both related to these natures. A person's nature gives rise to his inclination and taste for particular activities, and it is this particular nature, swabhav, that is known as the nature according to the specific type of work, tat tat karma yogya swabhav. So it's one's nature. Swabhav means nature. In some cases, birth is the prominent factor in ascertaining a person's nature, and in other cases, association is the primary factor. We see this very practically. Someone in the Western world, their father may be a priest, and their son may be a total drug addict, completely, or a thief, a dacoit. And in the Brahmin caste, it can be the same. They can be a total debauchee. So this doesn't qualify them for that status of Brahmana or priestlyhood in the Antija case. Nature is formed by association, which begins from birth. So birth is certainly one cause that determines the development of nature. Indeed, nature develops from the moment of birth, but that does not mean that birth is the only cause of nature and eligibility for a particular type of work. It is a great mistake to think like this, for there are many other causes. Therefore, the Shastras prescribe that one must study a person's nature when one assesses eligibility for work. We see in the form of the demon Kamsa. He was actually born in a saintly family, Ugrasen, Padmavati. Even though she was impregnated by a demon, nevertheless he was born into a family of Brajarishis, saintly kings, Ugrasen. But his nature was completely different to that. So his nature prevailed, not the association. Chudamani, what is meant by Tattvika Shraddha, faith in the absolute truth? Vaishnavadas, Tattvik Shraddha is pure-hearted faith in Bhagavan, which gives rise to a spontaneous attempt to attain him. A Tattvik Shraddha, unreal faith, is that which is based on an erroneous conception of Bhagavan, which arises in an impure heart on seeing worldly activities, and which gives rise to self-interested endeavors rooted in pride, prestige, and worldly desires. These are the principal enemies that will influence the consciousness away from their true nature, this pride, prestige, and worldly desires. Some Mahajans have described Tattvika Shraddha as Shastriya Shraddha, faith in the Shastras. It is this Tattvika Shraddha that is the cause of eligibility for bhakti. Faith in the Shastra will give rise for bhakti. If we have faith in the Shastra and all the places that it's leading, then the wayward mind and the wayward desires will be purified. My Gurudev often says it seems like the mind and all his desires are on one side and Radha and Krishna are on the other side. So we have this dichotomy, we can say, between the two worlds. But if we have rock solid faith, particularly in the Srimad Bhagavatam, if our faith can be inspired in that particular scripture from the very beginning of our journey as devotees, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and of course this Jaiva Dharma, as we're going through now, we're appreciating the depth of the truths that are being exposed here on the pages. This is not just referring to the Brahman caste, it's referring to our very intrinsic material identity. If we're identifying with our nature and reputation in this material world, that's not our Nitya-dharma. That is nimitic. Whatever your situation is in this material world is not Nitya. So we have to relate to our pure paramatic nature to fully let Bhakti Devi flourish in our hearts. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here. It's an hour. I don't do more than an hour because I think that's enough to digest. There's many, many truths that we've just walked over today, and more truths will come for tomorrow. So we'll begin with a fresh approach for tomorrow. Okay, Jaiva Dharma Ki Jai. We'll stop on this page 104. Actually, I just want to read this last question. Chudamani, let us admit that some people have developed faith in the Shastras, although their natures are not elevated. Are such people also elevated for bhakti? So this is the question that we're going to answer tomorrow. All good questions coming from Chudamani. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is crafting this, just like in his Jiva Tattva in chapter 16. He's hearing the heart of the conditioned soul. What are their real objections? And let them bring them out and let us purify them with Shastra. So these questions that are coming from Chudamani are very pertinent for our advancement and our understanding of what is Shuddha Bhakti and what is karma and what is gyan and what is vyavaharik, what is practical and what is paramatic. So these are all powerful teachings. So Jaiva Dharma Ki Jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai, Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. So now, today we're on page 104, and Chudamani is listening carefully to Vaishnava Das, and he's asking very intelligent questions. We should understand Chudamani is at the top of his profession, so to speak, as a Brahmin. He's a nationwide accomplished Brahmin. He's traveled all over India and he's defeated so many. So he's smart, but he's only smart in Gyan and the aspects of Vidhi at most. So he hasn't understood what is transcendence. He can't understand that the soul, if the soul is on a journey to transcendence, if he wants to become a Vaishnava, a Muslim, then he can transcend his caste and creed. But he can't engage in social activities because he's still in the body of a Muslim, just like we gave the example yesterday of Haridas Thakur. He would never think to go into the Jagannath temple. Sanatan Goswami was the same, and Rupa Goswami. They would never think to go into the Jagannath temple. But for us Westerners, we are blessed because my Gurudev has said that actually the heart of Lord Jagannath resides in Gopinath. So Tota Gopinath is there, that Mahaprabhu manifested himself, brought out of the sand, and Radha and Lalita Sakhi are there also. And Mahaprabhu, he left this world by entering into that body of Gopinath. So for anyone who is outside of that Brahminical caste, he can certainly go into the Gopinath temple and be welcomed with open arms. So we'll just read this question. Chudamani is saying, let us admit that some people have developed faith in the Shastras, although their natures are not elevated. Are such people also eligible for bhakti? Vaishnav Das. Shraddha is the only cause of eligibility for bhakti. This is a very important point. Shraddha. Nature is the cause of eligibility for karma. Yes, what is your nature? Your active karma, your material nature. You perform your activities according to your material nature. But bhakti is based on shraddha, on faith. But not for bhakti. Nature is the cause of eligibility for karma, but not for bhakti. In other words, they are born as brahmanas, but that doesn't necessarily qualify them for bhakti unless they're practicing bhakti. They haven't understood that. They've just been complacent and just sitting in their elevated position in society and been satisfied with that. It's practically the same as karma yoga. What is the difference? It's eligibility according to the body. This is clearly stated in the following shlokas from Srimad Bhagavatam 11, 20, 27, 28.
जात श्रद्धो मत कथासु निर्विणः सर्वकर्मसु वेद दुःखात्मकान् कामान् परित्यागेऽपि अनिस्वरः ततो भजेत् मां प्रीतः श्रद्धुर्दृढनिश्चयः जुष्मानश्च तन् कामान् दुःखोदकरमाश्च ग्रह्यान्.
A sadhak who has developed faith in narrations about me and who is disgusted with all kinds of fruit of activity may still be unable to give up material enjoyment and the desire for such enjoyment. Knowing that such so-called pleasures are actually sources of misery, he should condemn himself while attempting to enjoy them. In other words, don't try to enjoy in ignorance. Understand what we're doing. We have to wake up to these things. Therefore, in due course of time, he may be able to worship me with love, faith, and fixed determination. It's part of the path. He's not saying cut immediately. You do the pleasurable sensual activities, but you know that this is on the material platform. You're in no doubt whatsoever. Paramdrisvara nivartante. Then the higher taste will come.
प्रोक्तेन भक्तियोगेन भजतो मास्करान् मुने कामहृद्या नाश्यन्ति सर्वमयि हृदि स्थिते विद्यते हृदयग्रन्थिश्चिदायन्ते सर्वसमयः क्षीयन्ते चास्य कर्माणि मयि दृष्टा किलात्मनि.
Srimad Bhagavatam 11:20. These are instructions to Uddhav. When the sadhak constantly worships me by the method of bhakti yoga that I have described, I come and sit in his heart. As soon as I am established there, all material desires and sanskars, the impressions on which the material desires are based, are destroyed. Amazing. How beautiful. When the sadhak directly sees me as Paramatma situated in the hearts of all living entities, the knot of the false ego of his heart is pierced, all of his doubts are cut to pieces, and his desires for fruitive activities are completely eradicated. Very beautiful. This is Krishna himself directly speaking.
यत् कर्मभिर् यत् तपसा ज्ञानं वैराग्यतश्च यत् योगेन दानधर्मेण श्रेयोभिरितरैरपि सर्वं मद्भक्तियोगेन मद्भक्तो लभते न्यासा सर्वगपार्वर्गं मद्धामं कथाञ्चित् यदि वाञ्छति.
Whatever results are obtained with great difficulty through fruitive activities, austerity, knowledge, renunciation, practice of yoga, charity, religious duties, and all other auspicious types of sadhan are easily obtained by my bhaktas through the power of bhakti yoga. There doesn't need to be any extraneous endeavor, just direct. Although my bhaktas are free from all ambition, they could easily obtain promotion to the celestial planets or attain liberation or residence in Vaikuntha, but if they at all desired such things. So these efforts for austerity, etc., are not necessary for the bhakta. The bhakta simply needs, but this is very difficult for people to think because the whole material world is conditioned by the encouragement for achievement, achievement, achievement. We hear from tiny age, kindergarten, achieve, you must do well in your exams so that you'll get a good job, so you'll be able to lord it over people in the world, right? And you'll become happy with a big house and a big car, and then you'll be happy. There's no other way to be happy. But this idea of achievement, that's in the material realm. Even Gyan Bhakti is the idea of achievement. This is Aroha Panta. This is the ascending path. Our path is Avaroha Panta, the descending path where we're crying for mercy, pitifully crying for mercy. That means the embodiment of that verse, Trinada pi sunichena, Tarora pi suhishena, Amanina manadena kirtanya sarari. This verse, Trinada peace, this means, the first line means that natural humility is born from an absence of sense gratification. As soon as you no longer desire to enjoy the senses, a natural humility will come in the heart. And then the second line, Tarora Pisuishana, this is purity of the heart born from non-envy. The tree is the description of Tarora Pisahishana. And the tree is completely non-envious. You can chop the tree down or take its branches. It doesn't complain. It has no envy. So this pure-hearted aspect of the jiva is embodied in that. And then amanina. This is when the purity of the conditioned soul, when he's freed from the false ego, from the material ego, then he's able to conduct his activities very clearly and simply in life. This purity of the self by relinquishing the false ego. And then amanina, manadena. This is when the jiva, he offers respects to everyone according to their respective positions. So these four aspects are there. We have a very nice sheet with these written down that we'll post on the WhatsApp thread afterwards. This is from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Shikshastikam commentary on this verse. It's very beautiful. So this is a systematic development of Bhakti Yoga that arises from Shraddha, because his question was about are such people eligible for Bhakti? And Babaji is answering about Shraddha. Shraddha is the pinpoint. So this is a systematic development of Bhakti that arises from Shraddha. Chudamani, what if I don't accept the authority of Srimad Bhagavatam? Vaishnavadas, this is the conclusion of all Shastras. If you don't accept the Bhagavatam, you will be troubled by other Shastras. There is no need for me to quote many different Shastras. you may simply consider what is said in Bhagavad Gita, which is accepted by the adherents of all philosophical systems. In fact, all instructions are present in the Gita shloka that you uttered when you first arrived here. Bhagavad Gita 9:30.
अपि चेत् सुदुराचारो भजते माम् अनन्यभाग् साधुरेव मन्तव्यः समयग् व्यवस्थितो हि सः.
When one has no object of devotion other than me, and his faith is thus exclusively fixed in me, he remains absorbed in worshipping me by hearing Harikatha and chanting Hari Nam. Such a person has adopted the path of sadhus and should therefore be considered a sadhu, even if he behaves in opposition to the path of karma due to an abominable or depraved nature. Most wonderful verse. The purport is that the system of Varnashram that belongs to Karma Kanda is one type of path. The process of knowledge and renunciation that belongs to Gyan Kand is a second type of path. And faith in Harikatha and Harinam that develops in Satsanga is a third type of path. So again, these principles that I said at the beginning about Sadhu Sangha, Nam, Kirtan, and Bhagavat Shravanam. Sometimes these three paths are taken together as a single yoga system, identified either as Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, or Bhakti Yoga, and sometimes they are practiced as separate systems. When they're separated, then that's tragic because there's no conclusion. If you're just practicing Karma Yoga but you don't know about Bhakti Yoga, then you're going to be engrossed in all material activities. And if you're just practicing Jnana Yoga, you're just going to become someone who wants to merge into the Brahmajyoti, like a Brahmavad or a Mayavad even. So we have to see the linking of these three, identified either as Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, or Bhakti Yoga, and sometimes they are practiced as separate systems. The practitioners of these different systems are known as Karma Yogis, Jnana Yogis, and Bhakti Yogis. Amongst all of these, the Bhakti Yogis are the best because Bhakti Yoga is endowed with unlimited auspiciousness and is unparalleled in its supremacy. This conclusion is supported in the statement of the Gita. Yoginam
योगिनाम् अपि सर्वेषां गतेनात्म योगिनाम् अपि सर्वेषां मद्गतेनातामृतां मन श्रद्धावान् भजते यो मां सा मे युक्तमतो मतः.
O Arjuna, of all yogis, I consider the topmost yogi to be the one who constantly worships me with great faith, with his mind deeply absorbed in loving attachment to me. This is from the 6th chapter of Gita. The Gita 9:31-32 further explains.
क्षिप्रं भवति धर्मात्मा सस्वच्छान्ति निगच्छति कौन्तेय प्रतिजानीय ना मे भक्त प्रणश्यति मामि पार्थ मां हि पार्थ व्यपाश्रित्य येऽपि स्युः पापयोनयः स्त्रियो वैश्यस्ततः शूद्रस्तेऽपि यान्ति परां गतिम्.
It is essential that you clearly understand the purport of the shloka Shipram Bhavati Dharmatma. Faithful people who have adopted the path of Ananya Bhakti, exclusive devotion, are quickly purified of all faults in their nature and behavior. Dharma surely follows whatever there is in Bhakti, because Bhagavan is the root of all Dharma, and he is easily conquered by Bhakti. As soon as Bhagavan is established in the heart, Maya, who binds the jivas in illusion, is immediately dissipated. There is no need for any other method of sadhana. Dharma appears as soon as one becomes a bhakta and makes the bhakta's heart virtuous. The moment one desires for mundane sense enjoyment, have dissipated, peace pervades the heart. That is why Sri Krishna promises, my bhakta will never perish. I just said that Trinadapi Sunichena means that purity of heart arises when one is completely detached from the material energy. It's exactly the same as this. My bhakta will never perish. The karmis and jnanis may fall prey to bad association in the course of practicing their sadhana because they are independent, but the bhaktas do not fall down because the influence of Bhagavan's presence saves them from bad association. The bhakta has the supreme destination in his grasp, whether he takes birth in a sinful family or in the home of a brahmana. This is the point. Bhakti is superior to all other considerations, either a chandala or a brahmana. Bhakti reigns supreme because bhakti is referring to the paramatic aspect, the eternal aspect of nature of the jiva, whereas vyavaharik is the material consideration. They're quite distinct. Chudamani, look here. Provision found in our Shastras for determining caste by birth seems to me to be superior. One who has taken birth in a Brahmin family comes to the platform of knowledge by regular practice of Sandhya Vandana, and in the end he is destined to obtain liberation. I cannot understand how Shraddha develops. Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam explain that bhakti arises from Shraddha, but I would like to know clearly what the jiva should do to attain this Shraddha. He's confused. He doesn't know anything about this path of bhakti. He knows about the Sandhya Vandana, the path that the smartas practice, considering that to be devotion, but it's devotion to karma kand or gyan kand. It's not Shuddha Bhakti at all. Vaishnav Das. Shraddha is the jiva's nitya swabhav, eternal nature. We had in the very first chapter, remember the beautiful example of the iceberg. The iceberg, its nature is actually liquid, but it's become hard through association with the cold weather. And it thinks its identity is very hard. So this is an acquired nature. This is called nishag. So this swabhav will only manifest when that acquired nature is purified. When a warm current comes, for example, the iceberg will melt back into liquidity, which is its real swabhav. That's its real nature. It's not hard. So we are not this material body. When the warm rays from that transcendental sadhu begin to enliven our hearts, we also will wake up to our real identity and relinquish these bodily desires along with the whole bodily conception of reputation, etc., that I'm undergoing, trying to acquire in this world. They will all just peel away. That's called sadhu sangha. Shraddha is the jiva's nitya swabhav, eternal nature. But faith in the performance of varnashram duties does not arise from this eternal nature. Rather, it arises from naimitic swabhav, the circumstantial or temporary nature. It is said in the Chandogya Upanishad,
यद्वै श्रद्धाति अतः मनुते न श्रद्धानं मनुते श्रद्धाद् एव मनुते श्रद्धत्व एव विज्ञासितैव येति श्रद्धं भागवो विज्ञानस इति.
Sanat Kumar said, when a person develops Shraddha, he can think about a subject and understand it, whereas one cannot do so without Shraddha. You have to have faith in the topic first to think about it. Indeed, only a person who has Shraddha can reflect upon anything, right?
Yes.
You won't have the time to reflect if you have no Shraddha. You'll just either accept it or reject it, accept it or reject it. That's the nature of the mind. It doesn't go very deep. But if you have some faith in the objective of the practice, then you will go deeper and Shraddha will develop. Reflect upon anything. Therefore, you must inquire very specifically about Shraddha. Narad said, O Master, I particularly wish to know about this Shraddha. Some people who are learned in the conclusions of the Shastras have explained that the word Shraddha means to have faith in the Vedas and in the words of Sri Guru. This meaning is not wrong, but it is not entirely clear. In our Sampradaya, the meaning of the word Shraddha is given as follows.
श्रद्धात्वा अनुपोय वर्जम भक्ति उन्मुखी चित्तवृत्ति विशेषः.
Shraddha, this is Amnaya Sutra. Shraddha is the characteristic function of the heart that strives towards bhakti alone, which is totally devoid of karma and gyan, which desires nothing other than the exclusive pleasure of Krishna. This is the same as the verse Anyapilasita Shunyam Jnana Karamadi Anavritam. Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhaktya Uttama. This is topmost bhakti. When the sadhak regularly hears the instructions of sadhus in the association of Shuddha Bhaktas, a conviction arises in his heart that he cannot obtain his eternal welfare by the methods of karma, gyan, or yoga, and so on. Because how can you break out of this material world of consciousness without the help of something that is beyond this material? Like, for example, how can you get yourself out of a well unless someone throws you a rope who's not in the well? So these transcendental personalities in our Guru Parampara are not in this well. They're not in this conditioned state. So they can throw the rope from a transcendental place to pick. That's why our Guru Parampara is so imperative to catch up, to acknowledge regularly, constantly. This is the line, this is the current that is going to pull me out of this material predicament. Only this. You cannot get something transcendental from something material. It can't happen that way. You have to have that spiritual ignition in your heart that can only be ignited by someone whose heart is already ignited, like a piece of wood. A piece of wood can never catch on fire unless another piece of wood that is already on fire touches it. It just remains like a log for millions and millions of years. But when a lighted piece of wood touches it, immediately it can be inflamed. So our Guru Parampara is the same as that. When the sadhak regularly hears the instructions of sadhus in the association of Shuddha Bhaktas, a conviction arises in his heart that he cannot obtain his eternal welfare by the methods of karma, gyan, yoga, and so on, and that he has no means of success unless he takes exclusive shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Hari. When this conviction appears, it may be understood that Shraddha has arisen in the sadhak's heart. The nature of Shraddha is described as follows.
Sacha Sharanapati Lakshana.
But you see, one must be, this current that I've been talking about most of the day is humility. Unless this humility is there to become Sharanagat to Krishna, it means I have to appreciate that Krishna is the supreme and I am that infinitesimal jiva at Krishna's feet. I am not. Our misconception, whenever we try to enjoy the material energy, is that I am the boga. I am the bogatya. I am the enjoyer. As soon as that mood of enjoyment comes, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says, humility is far away. As soon as a sense of enjoyment comes in the heart, we think when we're about to take a meal, for example, the senses are all primed up to relish something for the senses, the sight, the smell, the taste, etc., of the food. But if we're not conscious of what is happening then, that the senses are taking prominence in my consciousness, we can have to control that. And if we start to control, for example, our dietary habits, our eating, etc., we will automatically carry that sense of control through to so many deep places in the consciousness. Automatically, if we can begin to control the tongue, it's saying Vacho Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, Jiva, Jiva. This Jiva is the tongue. The tongue is the gang leader, it's described, the dacoit leader of all the senses. It'll just get away if it's not carefully controlled. So if we use the tongue carefully for chanting Hare Krishna, carefully for speaking Harikatha, carefully for discussing these topics, and carefully honoring Mahaprasad. My Gurudev said so many times, we should not eat prasad, we should honor prasad. I'm saying that, but I don't know how to do that yet. I'm in process. And that he has no means of success unless he takes exclusive shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Hari. When this conviction appears, it may be understood that Shraddha has arisen in the sadhak's heart. The nature of Shraddha is described as follows. We just said that verse. Shraddha is characterized by its external symptom known as Sharanagat, surrender to Sri Hari. Yes, when we submit to the Lord, then Shraddha is there. Sharanagati is described in these words.
आनुकूल्यस्य संकल्पं प्रतिकूल्यस्य वर्जनं रक्षस्यति विश्वासो गोपर्तवर्णनं ततः आत्मनिक्षेपं कार्पण्य सद्विद शरणागतिः.
These are the 6 symptoms of self-surrender. The first 2 are anukulyasya sankalpa and pratikulyasya varjanam. I will only do that for which is favorable for unalloyed bhakti. Remember, he's answering the question about Shraddha. So it begins with faith, with Sharanagat. But remember also, as we've spoken before, that Sharanagat is not the principle of bhakti, it's the beginning of bhakti. It's the threshold of bhakti. When the faith is there, then one can inquire about bhakti. Well, who is Krishna? Where is Krishna? What are his pastimes, etc.? Then one can enter into the kingdom of bhakti. But Sharanagati must be there as a precursor to actually go there. I will reject all that is unfavorable. This is called sankalpa or pratigyan, a solemn vow. The third symptom is rakshasisyati vishvaso, faith in Bhagavan as one's protector. Bhagavan is my only protector. I can derive absolutely no benefit from Gyan Yoga and other such practices. This is an expression of trust, vishvasa. Just like Prahlad Maharaj, fully trusting in the Lord. The fourth symptom is gopritve varanam, deliberate acceptance of Bhagavan as one's maintainer. I cannot obtain anything or even maintain myself by my own endeavor. I will serve Bhagavan as far as I'm able, and he will take care of me. This is what is meant by dependence. Nirbharta, bharata. The fifth symptom is Atma Nikshkepa, surrender. Who am I? I am his. My duty is to fulfill his desire. This is submission of the self, Atma Nivedanam. The sixth symptom is Karpanya, meekness. I am wretched, insignificant, and materially destitute. This is what is meant by humility, Karpanya or Dainya. That's a very beautiful paragraph. We should mark this paragraph, and for further reference and to, if we need to describe to anyone the nature of humility, or of Sharanagati rather, this is a beautiful description. When these moods become established in the heart, a disposition arises that is called Shraddha. You see, that is bringing us to Shraddha. A jiva who has this Shraddha is eligible for bhakti, and this is the first stage in the development of the swabhav, like that of those pure jivas who are eternally liberated. Therefore, this is the nitya swabhav of the jivas, and all other swabhavs are naimitic. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is so generous-hearted. He's giving us all this simple roadmap, how to follow, how to acquire bhakti. It starts with Shraddha, how to acquire Shraddha. Shraddha begins with Sharanagati. These are all simple, logical, rational steps that the sadhak must take to actually acquire bhakti. And he's saying it in such a simplistic, beautiful way. Chudamani, I understand, But you still have not explained how Shraddha develops. He hasn't got that vision. If Shraddha develops from Satkarma, virtuous deeds, then my argument is still stronger, because Shraddha cannot arise without properly performing the Satkarma and Swadharma of Varnashram. Muslims do not perform Satkarma, so how can they be eligible for bhakti? So it's a good question.
Yes.
He wants to know the answer. It's a good question. Everyone understand the question clearly? How can a Muslim perform Satkarma when he can't be part of the Varnashram system? The Varnashram system was established by the Lord to progress for the jivas. But if a Muslim is not in the Varnashram system, how is he able to progress in that vyabharik way, in that material, practical way? Vaishnava Das, it is a fact that Shraddha arises from Sukriti, pious deeds. It is stated in the Brihat Naradiya Purana.
Bhaktistu Bhaktistu Bhagavad Bhakta Sangena Parijayate Satsanga Prapyate Pumbhi Sukritai Purva Sanchitahi.
The inclination for bhakti is awakened by association with Bhagavan's bhaktas. The jiva obtains the association of Shuddha bhaktas by the accumulated effect of spiritually pious activities performed over many lifetimes. There are two types of Sukriti, Nitya and Naimitic. The Sukriti by which one obtains Sadhusanga and Bhakti are Nitya Sukriti. The Sukriti by which one obtains material enjoyment and impersonal liberation are Naimitic Sukriti. Very clear. One is material and one is transcendental, one is spiritual. Sukriti which bears eternal fruit is Nitya Sukriti. Sukriti which bears temporary results, which are dependent upon some cause, is Naimitic or Anitya Sukriti. All types of material enjoyment are non-eternal because they clearly depend on some cause. Many people think that mukti is eternal, but this is only because they do not know the actual nature of mukti. The individual Atma, soul, is Shuddha, pure, Nitya, eternal, and Sanatan, primeval. The cause, nimitta, of the jiva's bondage is association with Maya, and mukti is the complete dissolution of this bondage. This act of deliverance or release from bondage is accomplished in a single moment. So the act of release is not in itself an eternal action. All consideration to make ends of mukti ends as soon as emancipation is attained. So mukti is nothing more than the destruction of a material cause. Material cause is binding the jiva. So when the jiva gets freed from that material cause, he considers, yes, I've achieved the highest principle, but that's still not, he's just getting freed from a material cause. It's not an infusion of transcendence, is it? Therefore, since mukti is only the negation of a temporary material cause, it is also naimitic, causal and temporary. On the other hand, rati, or attachment for the feet of Sri Hari, never ends once it is established in the heart of the jiva. This is what we talked about at the very beginning today. This eternal nature of this Jaiva Dharma. It never ends. There's no cessation to it. Therefore, it's eternal. So it's that eternal place that we are seeking to connect with, not the temporary cessation from misery and bondage. Therefore, this rati or bhakti is Nitya-dharma, and if we analyze its practices, angas, correctly, none of them can be said to be naimitic. The type of bhakti that terminates at the point that it bestows mukti is only a type of naimitic karma, while bhakti that is present before, during, and after mukti is a distinct and eternal truth, and it is the Nitya-dharma of the jiva. Mukti is but an irrelevant secondary result of bhakti. It is said in the Mundaka Upanishad,
परीक्ष्या लोकान् कर्मचितान् ब्राह्मणः निर्वेदाम् आयान् नास्ति आकृत कृतेन तद्विज्ञातं स गुरु एव अभिगच्छते सम्मित्पानि श्रोत्रियं ब्रह्मनिष्ठम्.
a Brahmana who has exhaustively studied the Shastras will become disinterested in the performance of karma by carefully examining the temporary, impure, and miserable nature of Swagaloka and other celestial planets, which are attainable by performing material pious deeds. We really see this in the 10th canto, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th canto. So many pastimes about Swagaloka and so much difficulties they have. So many difficulties for Lord Indra, the king of Swaga. So this is clearly shown before the 10th canto is reached. This is so because the Nitya Vastu, Bhagavan, cannot be obtained by worldly karma, for he is beyond the reach of karma. To gain factual knowledge and realization of that eternal Supreme Person, one should find a qualified guru who is learned in the Vedas, who is firmly established in the service of Bhagavan, and who knows the absolute truth. One should then approach that guru carrying wood for kindling a sacrificial fire, and should surrender body, mind, and words to him with faith and humility. Karma, yoga, and jnana all produce naimitic sukriti. Bhakta Sangha, the association of bhaktas, and Bhakti Kriya Sangha, contact with acts of devotion, produce Nitya Sukriti. Only one who has accumulated Nitya Sukriti over many lifetimes will develop Shraddha. Naimitic Sukriti produces many different results, but it will not lead to the development of faith in unalloyed bhakti. So we'll stop there. But I read this last part quite quickly. But you should, for yourselves, you can read it again carefully. This chapter, every page is just packed, pregnant with truths, heavy with wonder. Really, all these sentences are so powerful. But I would like to keep reading our Jaiva Dharma, so I'm not lingering too long on the different points. But we ourselves should go over it many, many times. I was sharing the other day how many times I've read this Jaiva Dharma. And yet every single time I read it, I feel I've never read it before. It's the truth. I feel this is the first time I'm really experiencing the clarity on these particular truths, because every time we will have progressed something in our consciousnesses, will become purified by our various practices in devotion or harinama, etc. And each time we assess it again, some new light is brought. This is the nature of an eternal Shastra. It's eternal. So we're very fortunate to go through this eternal Shastra. Sri Jaiva Dharma ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai.
Jai.
So I think we're on page 111, and we read this verse yesterday on the top of page 111. Parikyasya lokan karma chitan brahmano. We read that verse yesterday, right? So I'm just going to read the paragraph underneath it, because it's again to catch up where we are. We understand where we are, that Vaishnava Das is chipping away at very, 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 very deep sanskars. These pundits are not just ordinary on the street brahmanas, they are Paka brahmanas, and they've had lifetimes probably of practicing this brahmana caste philosophy of nyaya, and of teaching it, debating it, etc. It's their life and soul. So it's a major challenge that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is describing here. And Vaishnav Das is just performing. He doesn't actually convince them in the chapter, but he convinces them of the greatness of Vaishnava Das. They walk away chanting his glories. So this is the beginning of their journey, because they've glorified the Vaishnava, but they haven't accepted, because it's just too much of a leap. It's such a massive quantum leap. The consciousness can't cope with such enormous changes of thought. It's not equipped to challenge. It would just send the person mad. So it's a gradual process. So saying karma, yoga, and gyan all produce naimitic sukriti, these three paths, and these brahmanas only believe in karma, yoga, and gyan. But they think, their illusion is that they think they're performing bhakti. Bhakta Sangha, the association of bhaktas, and Bhakti Kriya Sangha, contact with acts of devotion, produces Nitya Sukriti. Only one who has accumulated Nitya Sukriti over many lifetimes will develop Shraddha. This is the topic, Shraddha. Naimitic Sukriti produces many different results, but it will not lead to the development of faith in unalloyed bhakti. So yes, so much.
Maharaj, like suppose there are devotees who are practicing Vaidhi Bhakti, and will that is the intention important there? Because that is also the kriya which they are doing is like a Sukriti Nitya, like chanting now. The devotees over there, the chanting, the reading Bhagavatam, but their motive is like they don't know that we have to like.
If they haven't picked up the mercy of Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu has only come to give Raganuga Bhakti. And I said yesterday that even my Gurudev was saying, I was listening yesterday, he was saying, even for thousands of births, if you've practiced this Vaidhi Bhakti, you cannot attain that Goloka Vrindavan. You can attain Vaikuntha, because in Vaikuntha, that mood of Vaidhi Marg is prevalent. And that is the Staibhav of the Vaikuntha Vasis. That is their intrinsic rasa. 2.5 rasas in Vaikuntha. Shantaras, Dasyaras, and a little bit of Sakyaras. When we read this Brihat Bhagavatamrita and see Gop Kumar, he's there associating with Lord Narayan. And all the Vaikuntha-vasis are singing beautiful hymns, etc., to please Lord Narayan. But Gop Kumar, he wants to dance. He wants to frolic around. That's his spontaneous mood. And all the other Vaikuntha-vasis are hushing him up, saying, no, 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 keep your suit and tie on, so to speak. Don't behave like a madman in front of Lord Narayan. Be very well behaved. Don't become spontaneous. And those Vaikuntha-vasis, they love that mood. That is their Staibhav. Their Staibhav is there. From nature, they're born there. And like we can understand this, we were just saying about perhaps the South Indian Brahmanas. They relish that Aishwarya mood. They would not want to. Mahaprabhu, when he was in the house in Sri Rangam of Venkatabhata, it took him a whole 4 months of the rainy season. And only at the very end did he begin to make some progress with the heart of Venkatabhata to convince him that actually the gopis' prem is more superior to Lakshmi Devi's prem. Because that's the ultimate. Who is Lakshmi Devi? She's Kaivyuha of Sri Radhika, but in a mood of Aishwarya. And Krishna likes Aishwarya. That's why it exists. Vaikuntha is a place of supreme opulence. And those devotees who go to that place absolutely relish that. And they would never want to change that. So they remain in that Vaikuntha Prem. It's described as Vaikuntha Prem. But it's in the rasas of Shanta and Dasya principally. Little bit of Sakya. But there's a mood. And they can never change that, because it's their intrinsic Staibhav. It's not like you go from Vaikuntha and where are you going to get any influence in Vaikuntha? Where did Gop Kumar get influence? Narad had to come and whisper in Gop Kumar's ear, oh, come with me, chant your mantra, chant your Gopal mantra, come to the place of, where was it after Vaikuntha? Was Mathura, I think, yeah, and then Dwarka. So come to this next place. Don't remain, don't linger here. So only because of the association of Narad was he able to actually, his Staibhav wasn't fitting in with Vaikuntha. But all the residents of Vaikuntha relish that. That's their Staibhav, their nature. So Vaidhi Marg is practiced in Vaikuntha. But Vaidhi Marg is not, we understand, because we've been blessed with the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to hear from the sadhus who have been blessed to give us the teachings of Mahaprabhu. explicitly from Rupa Goswami principally. Premras Niryase, Korite as well. Krishnadas Kaviraj, he's saying in the 4th chapter of Adi Lila and in the 8th chapter of Madhya Lila, Ramananda Roy Sambad, very, very clearly what is the opportunity for a sadhak in the current of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's radically different from Vaikuntha. And when we see people who are very much engaged in rules and regulations and not even hearing or even condemning those who are speaking about Raskata, this is most unfortunate because Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he certainly never spoke like this. He gave us the nectar of nectar of devotion and the nectar of instruction, both of these beautiful books of Rupa Goswami, to influence us towards Raganuga. But he could not teach that prominently because his mission was, first of all, put Krishna into the picture. He was preaching to practically animals, barbarians from the Western world who had never heard, I had never heard of Krishna in my life until Prabhupada brought him to the Western shores. Never, ever. As a child growing up, I'd heard of Jesus. My father was a Methodist priest, and I understood that religion was a very shallow presentation of Jesus from a very early age. But nevertheless, that indoctrination, and I always prayed to God, but it was in a Nirvishesh Brahm conception, because I had no idea. No one had told me about the personality form. It was just a prayer. It's like we talked about the Sufis the other day, and I sent one video around, and we see they're actually like, you look at the eyes on a few of those people when they're dancing, it's like they're getting infatuated with the Brahman, that impersonal Brahman nature. So that's the alternative if we don't hear about Krishna. But even hearing about Krishna, and then you don't hear about Raganuga Bhakti, after you've come in the time, because this time, after Mahaprabhu, is even more powerful, practically, than the time when Mahaprabhu was present. Because this Krishna consciousness is so readily available. It's been broadcast so widely across the planet. You can pick up any cell phone and you can find a whole Chaitanya Charitamrita. And you can read all these topics. If people read the Adi Lila chapter 4, you cannot be in any doubt. So it's bewildering how people are rigorously, carefully following the principles of Vaidhi Bhakti and not even looking to a higher quarter. They've been tricked. And they will reach Swaga perhaps. That's the place where they can reach by following carefully Vaidhi Bhakti. And perhaps if their Staibhav is in Vaikuntha, then at some future birth, perhaps with association from a Vaikunthavasi, because everything has to be association. If you're fortunate to have a Vaikunthavasi even, then you have to listen very closely to how he's describing Vaikuntha and what you have. That's like a South Indian Brahmin, very strict, very careful about all the principles and the yagyas and the mantras, etc. have to be perfectly pronounced. And then you become eligible for Vaikuntha Ras, or this Vaikuntha Prem. But Goloka Vrindavan is another prakosht. It's another dimension altogether. Does that answer your question? Chudamani, please explain clearly what you mean by Bhakti Sangha and Bhakti Kriya Sangha, contact with acts of devotion. From what type of Sukriti do these arise? Actually, Chudamani, we can sense Bhaktivinoda Thakur is demonstrating he's getting something. He's getting,
melting.
huh?
He's melting.
Yes, he's beginning to melt. He doesn't melt because it's like Devidas. Devidas began to melt, but then he came confronted with the Muslims. And that's why this whole chapter is coming. So the beginning process, but then some ancient objection will come in the mind and put a brick wall there and stop, because you have to go deeper and deeper into the consciousness of your own commitments and your own identity.
But don't you think, Maharaj, he'll melt because he's in touch, he's getting association of Vaishnava Das, who's a very
Yes, he's getting Sukriti.
pure.
Even he doesn't know that,
Yeah.
but he's getting That's why all his questions aren't so aggressive and as
Hmm.
challenging. And
It
it's as if,
was in the beginning. It was really.
yes, he was fighting, but now there's a touch of sincerity there. He actually wants to know. Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur wants to explain the depth of these truths, and he can only do that when the questioner is favorable. If you challenge too much, then you can't receive the answer. It never works that way. It has to be tadvidi pranipasena sevaya. It has to be in a mood like that of submissive Sharanagat. Vaishnav Das. Bhakta Sangha means conversing with Shuddha Bhaktas, serving them and hearing their discourses. We've already described Sharanagati. We've described the six symptoms of Sharanagati. He's described faith in detail here. This is a really powerful chapter. All the details of Shraddha have been put on the pages here. Shuddha Bhaktas perform the activities of bhakti, such as public congregational chanting of Sri Nam. Participating in these activities or performing them on one's own is called Bhakti Kriya Sangha, contact with acts of devotion, so either congregationally or alone. Either way will give you advancement. In the Shastras, activities such as cleansing the temple of Sri Hari, offering a lamp to Tulsi, and observing Harivarsha, Ekadasi, Janmastami, Ramnami, and other such days are called Bhakti Kriya. Even if one performs them accidentally or without pure Shraddha, they still create Bhakti Proshika Sukriti, virtue that nourishes devotion. Proshika, that's how you say that. Proshaka. When this Sukriti acquires strength, after many lifetimes, we have to settle down and realize that it's not just going to happen. We're so used to in this world, quick, fast food, fast this, fast lane of the highway. Minds are just going 1,000 miles an hour with all these electronics and stuff. It's exhausting for the mind to keep up. And we have this expectation constantly. Actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, just to share with you, because we were talking about Trinadapi Sunichana yesterday, this beautiful verse, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has described one explanation is that humility means having no expectations. No expectations. Consider that. You have no expectations of anybody else, and you're not over expectant of anything within yourself except the mercy of the Lord. But if you have no expectations, then you can remain in a very humble state of mind. No expectations. It
Even
has.
from Krishna.
Huh?
No expectation from Krishna.
Exactly. You're not expecting Krishna to come and treat you like a baby or a miracle to happen. You just want, and what do you want from
Love.
Krishna anyway? You
We
want to
need to
give
give
him
him.
something. So it's about giving, not with our hand out. Well, Krishna, if I do the arti today, will you give me some mercy? I'm doing the reading today, so you're going to give me some mercy? So I'll get a better life in my next birth? Is that all I'm thinking about? The expectancy of future like that, rather than the principle of, am I cultivating my innate attraction, my natural attraction to Krishna? Is that manifesting my natural attraction? Not coerced, not forced by rules and regulations or even Sangha, etc., but individually focused. Am I moving in that direction? Even if one performs them accidentally or without pure Shraddha, they still create Bhakti Proshaka Sukriti, virtue that nourishes devotion. Devotion is a deep thing. When this Sukriti acquires strength after many lifetimes, Shraddha for Sadhu Sangha and Ananya Bhakti, exclusive devotion, develops. It must be acknowledged that every vastu, substance, has some particular potency which is known as vastu shakti, the inherent potency of that substance we discussed before. What is pure dharma? This was in the first chapter and the second chapter. What is pure dharma? What is shuddha dharma?
Swadharma.
Huh?
Swadharma.
Swadharma. What is the intrinsic nature of that object? Like, for example, you can just take a mundane example like a broom. What is its swadharma? Is to sweep. It's not really to be used as anything else. So our swadharma is to serve Krishna. That's our nature. That's why it can't be coerced. Even Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada said right at the very beginning, this is not an imposition for the mind. It's not to be an imposition. If it's a big weight on the consciousness, that's not really in the path of bhakti. You will come into the path of gyan if you think it's by your own efforts and want to accumulate more and more and more knowledge, etc. But knowledge coming in that way, the empiric way, is like the aroha panta, the ascending path, not the soft avaroha panta. These activities produce sukriti even if they are performed indifferently. What to speak when they are performed with faith? This is expressed in the Prabhash Kand quoted in Hari Bhakti Vilas
म-
11:51.
मधुर मधुरम् एतान् मङ्गलं मङ्गलानां सकलनिगमवलि सत्फलं चित्स्वरूपं सकृदम् अपि परिगीतं श्रद्धया हेलया वा भृगुवरनरं मात्रं तारयेत् कृष्णनामम्.
Sri Krishna Nam is the sweetest among all things that are sweet, and it stands supreme amongst all that is auspicious. It is the eternal, fully ripened spiritual fruit of the wish-fulfilling tree of the Vedas. O best of the Brigus, if anyone even once offenselessly chants Sri Krishna Nam, either with faith or indifference, Sri Krishna Nam immediately delivers that person from the ocean of material existence. Incredible. This verse is actually in our songbook, right at the very beginning in the additional prayers. Many devotees, we chant this verse daily. Thus, all types of sukriti that nourishes bhakti are nitya sukriti. When this sukriti becomes strong, one gradually develops shraddha in ananya bhakti, unalloyed bhakti, and one attains sadhu sangha. It's a process. It's a process. Birth in a Muslim family is the result of naimitic duskriti, or temporary impious deeds, whereas faith in ananya bhakti is the result of nitya sukriti, eternal pious deeds. What is surprising about this? Oh, Vaishnav Das is saying it very clearly, but Chudamani, we'll see. Chudamani, this is what I meant by my previous question. If there is such a thing as bhakti proshaka sukriti, virtue that nourishes devotion, it must arise from some other type of sukriti. But Muslims do not have any other type of sukriti, so it is not possible for them to have bhakti prosaka sukriti either. Good question. It's a good question.
But it's answered here. You see, Maharaj is saying that because of Duskruti is got this body,
Yes,
but the faith is not with the body,
right.
it is with the soul. That
And if he gets the sort of association that we've just been describing, and if he happens to, like many of the Muslims living in Bengal, for example, are not really full-fledged Muslims in the sense of in other countries like Pakistan or someone like that. Most of the Muslims or many of the Muslims in Bengal were converted from Hindus, and all of the Muslims here in Bengal, they're all subjected or influenced by the Janmashtami festivals, by all the Gaura Purnima festival, and so many influences that the Hindu tradition regularly puts out on the street, so to speak. Many of the Muslim ladies, they will wear sindhu in their hair. They will take,
Harinam,
yes,
they can hear Harinam.
yes, they hear Harinam constantly. So it's a different flavor. So they're getting something. Some sukriti is coming there. So this is to support how a Muslim
Correct.
can actually go that way. Vaishnav Das, that is not a fact. Nitya Sukriti and Naimitic Sukriti are classified separately, so they do not depend on one another. There's Vyavaharik and Paramatic. They're both actually separate, distinct. Like Vaidhi Bhakti is different to Raganuga Bhakti. It
And it
doesn't.
is different from Karma Kand.
Karma and Gyan, yes, but if it's leading to Bhakti, then it can be said to be the same ladder. Then it can be all one. If you're performing your karma and you're anxious to come to Gyan Yoga, and you realize the ladder, that the ultimate goal is bhakti, then Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said many times, it's a single ladder. But when you separate them and say, no, we are Kam Kandis, we are Gyan Kandis, then you make a whole distinction when you separate them. But when they're together, then it's just the one. No, it is not a fact. Nitya Sukriti and Naimitic Sukriti are classified separately, so they do not depend on one another. Once there was a sinful hunter who was full of impious deeds, but he chanced to stay up all night and fast on Shivaratri. Because of the Nitya Sukriti he accrued from this, he developed eligibility for Hari Bhakti. It is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam 12:13-16, Vaishnavam Yata Shambhu. Among Vaishnavas, Shivji is the best. From this statement it is understood that Mahadev is the most worshipable Vaishnava, and one obtains Hari Bhakti by observing a vow to please him. If someone's a Shaivite and they understand more the nature and merciful personality of Lord Shiva, in the 38th chapter of this book, there's the beautiful Astakalya Leela, and it's spoken by Lord Shiva to Narad. So Lord Shiva is so much Vaishnavam Yatar Shambhu. So we can understand these things. Chudamani, so do you mean to say that Nitya Sukriti comes about by chance? Vaishnav Das, everything comes about by chance. This is also the case on the path of karma. What is the circumstance by which the jiva first entered the cycle of karma? Can it be anything other than chance occurrence? The Mimamsa philosophers have described karma as a nadi, being without beginning, but actually karma does have a root. The chance occurrence that brings one's original karma into effect is indifference to Bhagavan, Bhagavat Vimukata. So it's not actually by chance. It is indifference to Bhagavan that brings about our sojourn in this material world. It's like, for example, if you hide something in your hand and you put your hands behind your back and then you say to the child, which hand is the sweet in? So the child has a decision, but the result of this decision is not up to him. It can be this hand or this hand. So it's by chance. But
Simultaneous.
yes, simultaneously chance, and you have a decision making there.
Achintya. That's right.
Yes. Actually, in the 16th chapter, this is clearly described. That is vimuk. As soon as I turn away from Krishna for a split second, and I have a self-interest, it indicates, like in a dream, if, say, for example, there's many devotees, then all of a sudden in a dream, you just get distracted out the window to some set of steps that goes to a higher, and you leave that association. That was your choice to leave it, but it was by chance that option came in. So it's both. But ultimately, it's our fault. We have to see it like that. If we don't see it like that, then we're going to play, like I said before, this victim. It's not my fault, but it is our fault. This brings up many points, but it's actually more for Jiva Tattva in the 16th chapter. The chance occurrence that brings one's original karma into effect is indifference to Bhagavan.
Like what you said, the chance of occurrence is it's a result of forgetting Krishna.
Yes.
Otherwise, there's no chance.
And that forgetting Krishna means that subtly, I want to actually be the enjoyer. It's this Mayavad tendency that is optional for us. We can either follow that or not. As soon as I want to enjoy anything, then I'm usurping Krishna's position. I'm taking away his supremacy. But if I'm always submissive, Sharanagat, etc., that we've discussed, with absolute faith in Krishna's love for me, we can appreciate that before I pray to generate my own affection to him. I can appreciate by so many different examples in the Shastra of his unlimited compassion to the fallen conditioned jivas. Similarly, Nitya Sukriti also seems to be a chance occurrence. It is said in the Svateshvarta Upanishad,
समाने वृक्षपुरुषो निगमनो निस्यसोचति मुह्यमानः जुष्टं यदा पश्यति अन्यम् ईशम् अस्य महिमानाम् एतिवीतशोकः.
the jiva and the indwelling Paramatma both reside in the same tree, namely the material body. The jiva is attached to material sense enjoyment and is therefore sunk in the bodily conception of life. Of course, we're sunk in it because we want some pleasure from that. So we have to be completely immersed in it. How much money have I got? How will I build a nice house? Is my car working today? This and this. So many details of material life that I get sunk in, absorbed, because I want something from this world. I want some pleasure. Bewildered by Maya, he cannot find any means of deliverance, and thus he laments. However, by the influence of Sukriti, acquired over many lifetimes, we're hearing this constantly, many lifetimes, he can obtain the mercy of Ishvara or his Shuddha Bhaktas. At that time, he will see in his heart that there is a second individual within the tree of his body. This is Ishvara, who is served eternally by his unalloyed Bhaktas. When the jiva witnesses the uncommon glories of Sri Krishna, he becomes free from all lamentation. The consciousness of Krishna will immediately dispel any grievance or lamentation whatsoever. And what is the best way, easiest way for us to hear about? As Harinam will inspire us, but if we use the energy from Harinam to hear about Krishna's Leelas in Vrindavan, his pastimes, especially with the gopis, because it's by that connection that's going to carry us into the highest conception. This is what Mahaprabhu is giving, Rag Mag Bhakti Loke. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 10:51-53,
भवापवर्गो भ्रमतो यदा भावजे जनस्य तार्हि अच्युत समागमः सत्संगमो यर्हि तदैव सद्गतौ पर्वार्षे त्वयि जयते रतिः.
O Sri Achyuta, you are eternally situated in your original spiritual form. The jiva has been wandering in the cycle of birth and death since time without beginning. When the time for his release from this cycle approaches, he obtains satsanga, and through this he becomes firmly attached to you, who are the supreme goal of attainment for the sadhus and the controller of both spirit and matter. And in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25-25,
सतां प्रसंगं मम वीरसंविदो भवन्ति रत्कर्णरसायन कतः तज्जोषणाद् अस्व अपवर्ग वर्तमनि श्रद्धा रतिर् भक्तिर् अनुक्रमिष्यति.
so this is in the Kapila Sangvad to Devahuti in the third canto. In the association of Shuddha Bhaktas, the recitation and discussion of my glorious activities and pastimes are pleasing to both the heart and the ears. By cultivating knowledge in this way, one becomes established on the path of liberation and progressively attains Shraddha, then Bhav, and finally Prema Bhakti. So this progression, and it begins with the path of liberation. We all came, most of us come to this path because we desire liberation from the suffering of this material world. That's our impetus to actually coming. And then we, for some time, we still hold that desire for pleasure for me. But then the more we are able to absorb the beauty and sweetness of Krishna, the more we start to forget about my own personal agenda of being liberated. The more I only want to connect in affection and devotion, like I'm witnessing in the hearts of the Brijbasis, more than the Brijbasis, of the gopis. When I witness the extremity of their affection, that for them, one moment, even when they're blinking their eyes, when Krishna returns at the time of Goduli, with the cows and all the dust has been raised, and they curse Lord Brahma, the creator, saying, why did you give us eyelids that blink? We lose a moment, a fraction. How long does it take to blink?
Hmm.
What is the time? And they are aware of that blinking is actually obstructing their view, their darshan
Hmm.
of the Lord of their life. So that is the extremity. And when they have Yugayata the Mishnah, Chakshusam Pritaya, Sunyayitam Jagat Sarvam, Govinda Hrimre.
Govindabhayena.
One moment away from Krishna brings about the most intense separation. Because that separation is going to ultimately intensify the meeting with Krishna. If there's no separation, then the meeting will be less. But when there's intense separation, and within that separation, we understand, ultimately there will be union. That Mohan and Modan Bhav, that is union within the separation. That's a whole other topic. Chudamani, in your opinion, is there no difference between an Aryan and a Yavana? So he's back to square one in a sense. Actually, he's been convinced.
Hmm.
And now he's a little bit bewildered because he's seeing the paramatic, the pure transcendental non-distinction between the souls,
Hmm.
the Muslims and the Hindus. So this is why he's asking the question. Vaishnav Das, there are two kinds of differences. Paramatic, that those that relate to the absolute, now he's going to repeat himself, those that relate to
Reality.
where it relate to the absolute reality, and vyavaharik, those that relate to practical experience. There is no paramatic difference between Aryans and Yavanas, yet the vyavaharik difference does exist. That's everything. Actually, he said everything just in that one sentence. But he has to say it again and again in different ways, because this personality is deeply rooted in this misconception that we should look at the vyavaharik consideration principally of birth. And if the Muslim is through his duskrita, sukriti, born in a lower birth, how can he possibly attain shuddha prakriti, sukriti? How can he possibly attain that? Bhakti sukriti. Chudamani, why do you insist on repeatedly showing off your verbosity in Vedanta? What do you mean by a vyavaharik difference between Aryans and Yavanas? Ignoring Chudamani's impertinence, Vaishnav Das answered, this is how we should behave. When someone is really confronting and rude to us, we should try to ignore that personal slight to us, because we don't have attachment to our material reputation, etc. That's not what we're trying to shore up. So if someone calls me a big fool, okay, what else is he saying? What else can I answer the question why he's thinking that? Can I give him something beneficial? Because if you take it personally, then you give that person the reality of committing an offense. And then what is the purpose of your preaching if you're just encouraging people to? Why did Mahaprabhu take sannyas when those students, they chased him? Oh, he chased the students rather. But then the students started to plot to actually beat Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu could understand, this is not the purpose I've come to actually disturb people to such a degree like that, that they want to actually attack me. This is not productive where I'm going. So then he decided at that point, at that very point, there were many other reasons, of course, but that particular catalyst of the point was when I'll leave and take sannyas. So this people will be able to respect me. And when I'm chanting Gopi, Gopi, Gopi like he was, then they're not going to confront me in that way. Ignoring Chudamani's impertinence, Vaishnav Das answered, the term Vyavaharik refers to worldly customs. So he's explaining his language. Chudamani didn't understand the language. In domestic life, Yavanas are considered untouchable, so their association is unsuitable from the Vyavaharic or practical point of view. Aryans should not touch water or food that has been touched by a Yavana. The body of a Yavana is insignificant and untouchable because of his unfortunate birth. He's talking about the body, Vyavaharic. Chudamani. Then how can there possibly be no difference between Aryans and Yavanas from the absolute point of view? Please explain this clearly. So we'll discuss this point tomorrow. But he's more or less explained it all already. But he's just reiterating it so that we will get a deeper impression of it, because we're hearing all these different truths, and probably half of them we miss. But they've actually gone somewhere into the archive of our consciousnesses. And when it's necessary in a particular situation, Krishna will release those impressions from our consciousnesses to address whatever situation it is that we're facing. And I personally experienced this many times when I haven't been conscious of many of the different teachings that I've received. But when the actual instance comes, when I've needed that fund of knowledge, somehow, as if mystically, it'll come because the impression has already been made there, even if I haven't tried to sort of sustain it, but still the impression is there. This is why we should just listen and pray for the strength to absorb and realize these truths, not necessarily retain every single factor and so on, but just if you have realization, then you realize the mood, you realize the whole picture, and it's not like nothing is missing, you get the whole picture. So Jaiva Dharma ki jai, Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Anantakoda Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Just let me see how many pages we have left here.
Few.
How many?
Very few.
Yes.
5, 6.
So, yes, we have tomorrow and Saturday. I want to be on schedule, hopefully, to finish a chapter a week. That'll be a good speed. I'm not trying to go quickly or anything, but at the same time, I want to go to healthy stage because the book itself speaks for itself. Whatever other little comments I can throw in are very secondary to the actual body of the text. What the actual text is delivering is like the Srimad Bhagavatam, what that actually delivers and says. That is the highest to listen to. Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. So coming to our chapter 6 now, in page 115 we're doing. And yes, yesterday, Chudamani, he asked a wonderful question that we just left. We didn't give the answer yesterday. So now we're coming to in the middle of page 115. So Chudamani, he's asked many questions and they've all been beautifully reconciled and patiently answered by Vaishnavadas. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is weaving all the etiquette of Vaishnava behavior within the pages simultaneously. It's not simply just gyan and knowledge, etc., but it's many, many different levels that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is educating us on. So this Vaishnava behavior is imperative to imbibe and learn how to behave amongst Vaishnavas. And we heard just before how, just the paragraph before, Chudamani actually insults Vaishnavadas. And yet Vaishnavadas is saying, ignoring Chudamani's impertinence, Vaishnavadas answered. So he ignored, almost like a call from the darkness, like a noise in the darkness. He just ignored it. Why paid attention? So now Chudamani, he's asking this question. Then how can there possibly be no difference between Aryans and Yavanas from the absolute point of view? That's the Paramatic point of view. Please explain this clearly. We know these two words we're becoming familiar with. Vyavaharik, which means practical in the material realm, naimitic, and paramatic, which means fully transcendental. Vaishnavadas. The Shastras have affirmed this lucidly. Briguvara Naramatram Tariet Krishna Nam. O best of the Brigus, Sri Krishna Nam delivers all men. According to this shloka, Yavanas and all other human beings have an equal opportunity to attain the supreme goal of life. Those who are devoid of Nitya Sukriti are known as Dvipada Pashu, two-legged animals, because they have because they have no faith in Krishna Nam. Faith will acquire in Krishna Nam. The more we vibrate it, the deeper our faith will go. Faith is a commodity that grows. It's a quality that will grow. We never say completely, for example, oh, I am now Sharanagat. I am now surrender. Surrender is a process that we're making constantly, daily, even moment by moment. Shraddha is the same dynamic. It's a fully evolving state of consciousness where we hear various truths throughout the day, and each day another notch, another notch, another notch. It becomes clearer and more significant. Our ultimate um, attraction and affection towards Sri Krishna. Such people have no human qualities, even though they have attained a human birth. It is said in the Mahabharata, Mahaprasada Govinde Nama Brahmani Vaishnave Swalpa Punya Vadam Rajan Vishvaso Naiva Jayate. O king, one who has passed pious deeds, O king, one whose past pious deeds are very meager cannot have faith in Mahaprasad, in Sri Govinda, in Sri Krishna Nam, or in the Vaishnavas. Nitya Sukriti is great Sukriti that purifies the jiva. Naimitic Sukriti is insignificant. Sukriti that does not have the power to awaken Shraddha towards transcendental objects. This Naimitic Sukriti will not bear its fruit when we're leaving this body. If we've incurred so much, for example, fame and reputation and acclaim in this world, none of that, because it's all naimitic, it's all temporary, none of that will have the slightest whisper of effect at the time of leaving this body. That will all just be left behind. So why should we waste our energy and endeavors trying to acclaim that type of reputation, etc.? Totally, utterly naimitic, therefore to be rejected. Nitya Sukriti awakens Shraddha towards transcendental objects. In this material world, there are 4 transcendental objects that awaken spiritual consciousness: Mahaprasad, Krishna Nam, and the Vaishnavas. 4. Mahaprasad, Krishna Nam, and the Vaishnavas. Chudamani smiled slightly at this statement. He said, "What kind of strange idea is this? That is simply the fanaticism of the Vaishnavas. How can rice, dal, and vegetables be chinmaya, spiritual? There is nothing that you Vaishnavas are incapable of." Excuse me. I get the feeling that Chudamani is knowing that he's being defeated here heavily. He's being squashed entirely by Vaishnava Das's explicit, beautiful answers. So he's starting to squirm, so to speak. And in that squirming, he's becoming more rude. Now he's condemning Mahaprasad. Vaishnava Das, whatever you do, please do not criticize the Vaishnavas. This is my humble request. In a debate, one should argue the points in question. Now Vaishnava is being a little bit standing up. because Chudamani began to make blasphemy towards the Vaishnavas. The Vaishnava cannot tolerate this. Blasphemy for himself, he will tolerate. But when blasphemy of Mahaprasad, Krishna, and the holy name and the Vaishnavas is there, then the Vaishnava will not tolerate. Just like the instigation of this whole conversation, this debate, they are the Mahajans were insulted. Remember at the beginning of this chapter, and this was why the Vaishnavas even chose to engage in this debate, because they felt that the Vaishnavas' faith in the Mahajans had been questioned. So this was intolerable for them. Therefore, they preferred to um, take this debate, which was not in their taste particularly. But now Chudamani has begun to cross the line in his discomfort at being defeated soundly by Vaishnava Das. Of course, he will never admit it. Pride and envy are the two symptoms of a conditioned soul. Chudamani is definitely a conditioned Brahmana. He may be very eloquent and brilliant, etc., and defeating others in Nyaya Shastra, but when it comes to Nitya considerations, eternal considerations, we've understood very clearly he is not at all conversant with them, especially even Mahaprasad. Vaishnavadas, whatever you do, please do not criticize the Vaishnavas. This is my humble request. In a debate, one should argue the points in question. What is the use of deriding the Vaishnavas? In this material world, Mahaprasad is the only food which is fit to be accepted, because it provokes spiritual consciousness and dissolves one's materialistic nature. Therefore, Sri Isopanishad 1 says, Isavasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jatyatyam jagatyam jagat. Tene tyaktena bunjita ma grahari gridha kasyavid danam. Everything animate and inanimate within the universe is situated in Ishvara and also pervaded by him. Therefore, in a detached mood, one should accept only what is necessary for one's maintenance, considering all things to be the remnants of Ishvara. All things to be the remnants of Ishvara. Everything in this world. One should not be attached to another's wealth, considering himself to be the enjoyer. Very beautiful verse. Just accept our allotted karmic results in this life and be satisfied with that, and don't become envious of others' apparent acquirements and wealth and lust after that. What will be the result? Will be completely restless mind, always wanting more and more and more, disturbing the consciousness, no end, no satisfaction. We can find satisfaction within the holy name of the Lord. We can find satisfaction in our personal bhajan, our personal endeavors to connect with the Lord in transcendence. That takes care of everything. There's nothing. We have the verse I've said many times yesterday, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma na Sochati na Kanchati. No more suffering and no more lamentation, no more hankering. This hankering, this mind always wanting more, striving. Striving for what? Unless we're striving to connect with the Supreme, which is not in the same way as striving for some material gain, but this striving or this focus on our coming to the Lord in a loving mood should be there, but not in an agitated way. Whatever exists within the universe is connected to Bhagavan's potency. One will give up the worldly minded spirit of enjoyment if he considers everything to be related to Bhagavan's Chit Shakti, spiritual potency. We know that everything is manifesting from Sri Radha, from the Shakti Tattva. This is all manifesting from her. So we should view that energy around us constantly and appreciate that. I've said before how Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he said when the enjoying spirit is prominent, we should know that humility is far away. If humility is far away, nothing else can transpire. An introspective jiva will not be degraded if he accepts only those worldly things that are necessary for the maintenance of his body, considering them to be the remnants of Bhagavan. On the contrary, excuse me, his inclination towards spiritual consciousness will be aroused. The remnants of food and other articles offered to Bhagavan are known as Mahaprasad. It is a great misfortune that you have no faith in such extraordinary objects. What a tragedy. Chudamani, let us drop this subject and return to the original point of our discussion. What is the proper behavior between the Yavanas and you people? Vaishnava Das. As long as someone remains a Yavana, we remain indifferent to him. However, when someone who was formerly a Yavana becomes a Vaishnava by the influence of Nitya Sukriti, we no longer consider him a Yavana. This is very clear in the following statement from the Padma Purana. Shudram va bhagavat bhaktam nishadam swachanam tata vikshate jati sam anyat sa yati narakam durivam. Quoted from Hari Bhakti Vilas. If one considers a devotee of Bhagavan to be a member of the lowest of the four castes, Sudra, a member of an aboriginal tribe of hunters, Nishag, or an outcast, Dog-eater, Swapacha, merely because the devotee has taken birth in such families, one is assuredly destined for hell. Very powerful. We may think we are so fallen taking birth in demonic species of life, basically, in the Western world, etc. What qualification do we have when we consider the qualities of Brahman, even the qualities of Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, etc.? We are Antyaja in the Varnashram system, in the Vyavaharik system, in the practical system. Yet, as Vaishnavas, we can be confident of our acceptance within the spiritual realm by the pure Vaishnavas, just like we see Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur, but he was so humble simultaneously because that is the real quality of a Vaishnava, to demonstrate this abject humility. And the same with Rupa and Sanatan, because they had associated so long with the Yavanas in Ramkeli, in their secretary and the prime minister. But nevertheless, they consider themselves most fallen. And that humility is such an attractive quality to all the Vaishnavas. So much mercy will come from the Vaishnavas if we always ourselves, coming in the West from the Western world, maintain that humility within the congregation of perhaps many Indian devotees. Then that will be most endearing, and mercy will flow to us if we always have a humble mood that is always attractive to everybody. Chudamani, I understand. Then can a Grihastha Vaishnava make marriage relationships with the Yavana family? Oh, I didn't finish. I missed something here. I'll go back a couple of paragraphs. The Itihasya Samuchaya also says, Name Priyas Chaturvedi Mad Bhakta Swachapa Priya Tasmai Dayam Tato Grayam Sacha Pujya Yata Hyaham. This is from the Hari Bhakti Vilas also. A Brahmana who has studied the four Vedas but has no bhakti is not dear to me, whereas my bhaktas is very dear to me, whereas my bhaktas are very dear to me, it should be, even if he has taken birth in a family of dog-eaters. Such a bhakta is fit to receive charity, and whatever he offers should be accepted. Indeed, he is as worshipable as I am. Krishna also says that beautiful verse, Naham Vashapi Vaikunte Yoginam Pridayena Cha Mad Bhakta Yatra Gayanti Tata Tishashtami Narada. That I am not in the heart of that Brahmana, even in the heart of those who reside in Vaikuntha, as much as I am in the heart of those pure bhaktas. He's telling Narada this because we know in the realm of Vaikuntha, that is not the same mood as in the other spiritual domains, because they are worshipping Krishna in full Aishwarya. There is something lacking in the Shanta and Dasya and a little bit of Sakya within Vaikuntha, even though for those immersed in that, they feel that is everything. They are totally content. But there is um, gradation, but that is their staiba, so they're fixed there. Chudamani, I understand. Then can a Grihastha Vaishnava make a marriage relationship with a Yavana family? Vaishnava does. From the general point of view, a Yavana remains a Yavana in the eyes of the general populace until he relinquishes his body. But from the absolute point of view, he is no longer regarded as a Yavana since he attains bhakti. Bhakti is a transcendental quality. Marriage is one of the 10 kinds of social rights, smarta karma. If a grihastha, Vaishnava, is an Aryan, that is, if he is included within the first varnas, he should only marry within his own varna. Even though the religious duties associated with the 4 castes are nimitic in nature, they are still recommended for the maintenance of domestic life. We have to live in this world socially. We have to interact with everyone around us. We cannot just be um, flagrantly transgressing social etiquette. That will not help in any fashion whatsoever for our own advancement or for the advancement of the conditioned souls. We should be cautious and behave in such a way that our Guru Maharaj would be proud of us if we always think like that in our behavior. One cannot become a Vaishnava simply by giving up the social customs of the 4 varnas. Vaishnavas should adopt whatever is favorable for bhakti, and one can only give up the duties of the varnas when he has become qualified to do so by genuine detachment. No one can give up the duties of the 4 varnas and everything associated with them. Varna dharma can be given up easily when it becomes unfavorable to bhajan. Similarly, a yavana who has awakened faith in bhakti has the right to give up the association of the yavana community if it becomes unfavorable for bhajan. Suppose that one Vaishnava is an Aryan who is qualified to give up the 4 varnas, and another Vaishnava is a Yavana who is qualified to give up his community. Then what is the difference between them? Both of them have given up Vyavahara, that which relates to ordinary life, and both have become brothers in regard to Paramata, spiritual reality. So this highlight and focus on what is Paramata, what is Paramatic, what is Paramata, what is this quality of transcendence is the priority. This is really simple, but if someone is not open to wanting to accept this, because what does Chudamani have to lose if he starts to agree with Vaishnava Das? He has all of his whole life's reputation at stake here. If he actually takes these instructions to his heart, he has to drop his entire inflated impression of himself. And that's a huge step. It's a quantum leap. It doesn't happen overnight. So therefore, Chudamani, he's been preached to like this, he's been spoken to like this, but he's not ready yet because he hasn't associated sufficiently with sadhus, he hasn't practiced Nam Bhajan, he hasn't associated with the Bhagavatam sufficiently, Maturavas, and this Srimutaya Sevaya, Shradaya Sevaya, these 5 limbs of bhakti, he hasn't immersed himself in. He's engaged in Naimitic Nyaya debates, so he has no real qualification. Yet still he's hearing this. But we should understand, we will meet people, and their pride is too insurmountable for them to come across to accept these truths. But basically, even a child can understand what we're saying. However, this principle of rejecting Varna Dharma does not apply to a Grihastha Vaishnava. A Grihastha Vaishnava should not give up domestic society until he is fully qualified to do so, even if it is unfavorable to bhajan. That means you can't just leave your family and wife because you're saying, oh, I have no bhajan, I must leave my family and my dependents, unless you make some proper arrangement for their maintenance, etc. I mean, we know in the Varnashram system that the elder son should take over when the father leaves the home. At approximately the age of 50 or 60, the father should either take Vanaprastha or he should go to the forest completely and take sannyas. And at that time, the elder son should maintain the mother and the rest of the family or other relatives, etc. So this is social sense, so to speak. So the grihastha must attend to this. So therefore, he's saying here, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his own life, I'm sure many times he was actually tempted just to run to the forest. He's such a realized soul, and yet he was living with 10 children and all their husbands and wives, etc., and their grandchildren. But still, he remained there performing his social obligations to set an example in the world to society at large. He wasn't breaking the social etiquettes to make disturbance in the world. A Grihastha Vaishnava should not give up domestic society until he is fully qualified to do so, even if it is unfair. If he's fully qualified, it means that he knows that Krishna is going to maintain. Ananyas chintayantomam ye jana prayapasate. Krishna will carry what we lack and he'll preserve what we have. This is Bhagavad Gita is saying like this, that Krishna will take care of everything. So if I'm fully realized in that, then I have nothing to fear. Krishna will make some arrangement. But if there's, like in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life, there was so much to be done on the material platform that he was doing. He was actually educating the British Raj by his activities, and he was nurturing the direction of the Vaishnavas, the Vaishnava communities. He would, this Nam Hatha, that he wrote a beautiful book called Godrum Kalpatavi. This is describing the whole Namhata sequence. And he wanted to propagate this Namhata everywhere. So it was favorable for him to remain in his Grihastha ashram and not simply go to the forest. He had a great mission for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to perform, and that included the respectability of the Varnashram system. He wasn't looking to break that in any sort of um, dramatic fashion. He was honoring that to give opportunity for those who are in that ashram or in Grihastha life to follow Bhaktivinoda Thakur, to follow him carefully, and to still perform bhajan. We have to think about all these things deeply. A Grihastha Vaishnava should not give up domestic society until he is fully qualified to do so, even if it is unfavorable to bhajan. However, he can easily give up worldly society when firm attachment and affection for that which is favorable to bhajan awakens in his heart. It is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11:11:32, Agnayavam gunan doshan maya dishtan api swakam dharmam santyaja ya sharvam mam bhajet satu sat satamaha. Sri Krishna says, in the Vedas, I have given duties to human beings, explaining what are positive attributes and what are false. One is considered the best of sadhus if he knows all this, but abandons his duties to worship me exclusively, with the firm conviction that all perfection may be attained by bhakti alone. So who's the prime example of this? Is the gopis. The gopis, they abandoned all of their material home life totally. The children they were taking care of, their duties, their dharma as young girls, they transgressed that. They did absolutely everything. They completely, in a sense, we can say, died to live. Their only concern was pleasing Krishna. So they were ready to completely give up everything of their material welfare, their material life, their reputation, etc., which is most dear, especially to a young 16, 17-year-old girl, 15-year-old girl. Her reputation is paramount in the world, what people think of them. They gave all this up. They didn't know that Yogamaya was going to supply replicas to take their place. So actually there was going to be no disturbance because Krishna decided he didn't want to disturb the whole village of Braj with the drama that would have ensued if everyone had known that all the young girls had run to the forest. So Yogamaya, she facilitated Krishna to perform these pastimes, and Krishna very carefully didn't make any waves, so to speak, in the social order. But nevertheless, the example of the gopis, this is why we follow the gopis emphatically. We want to embrace all their moods of their attraction to Krishna, their supreme attraction to Krishna. Nothing else was in their hearts except to bring Krishna pleasure, even at the expense of their lives completely, because basically they did die leaving their homes. They died like the Brahmin wives also. When the Yagya Brahmin wives, when they came to Krishna, they had the same mood. They were leaving their husbands, all their family behind. They wanted to stay in the forest with Krishna. But Krishna told them, no, it's not compatible. You're Brahmanese. I'm a cowherd boy. It's different. It's not going to be socially acceptable like this if you remain with me. You go back to your husband. And Krishna arranged for the husbands to be enlightened about the greatness of their wives. So in each case, Krishna has covered that. But we should understand this mood of the gopis again and again. Daily, we should appreciate their moods. This is corroborated by the ultimate conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. Sarva dhammam parityaja mam ekam saranam braja aham tam sarve papabhyo mokshayishyami ma suchaha. Don't worry, ma suchaha. Abandon all varieties of nimitic dharma, such as karma and gyan, and surrender only unto me. Do not lament, for I will deliver you from all sinful reactions incurred by giving up your prescribed duties. So this is full Sharanagati. But again, we are always aware that Sharanagati is the threshold of bhakti. This Sharanagat mood is just the very beginning of our entering into what is pure bhakti. Sharanagati is about me. It's about what I'm doing. I'm surrendering. It's not about my attraction to Krishna. That comes in the Srimad Bhagavatam, especially in the 10th canto. So this Sharanagati is essential. And I've mentioned before how Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, he explains that Sharanagati is like getting dressed. We have to get dressed to go on the street and socially interact with the environment around us. But getting dressed is not the principal focus and point of life. It's not the purpose in life. We have activities to perform. So similarly, Sharanagati must be there. We must be dressed. We must be equipped with full surrender to the Supreme Lord. And then we can conduct our activities of devotion, this bhakti. We can appreciate the examples of devotion, especially the gopis, as I'm speaking now. This is supported further in Srimad Bhagavatam. Yada yasan grinanati Bhagavan Atma Bhavita Sa jihati matim loke Veda cha parinishditam. Bhagavan bestows, that's from the 4th canto, 29th chapter. Bhagavan bestows his mercy upon the jiva with whom he is pleased because of his self-surrender, or his service to him by complete absorption of his inner faculties. We can't really fully surrender without this inner absorption to the Lord. We can go through the gradual steps. What's that? Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam rashiksishati vishvaso gopritva varanam tata atmanishkepa karpanya sadvidim sharanagati. These 6 symptoms of surrender we can go through. Vaishnavadas, he's already explained these. So these 6 symptoms, we want to imbibe what is Sharanagat and then move forward into bhakti. At that time, the jiva gives up attachment for all social customs and religious rituals prescribed in the Vedas. Religious rituals also are given up. Everything is given up at the time when that full-blown consciousness of my relationship with the Lord will rise. Then there's no need for any further pursuit in the material world at all. Can we do that? It's a big leap, but we can think about it. We can hope for it. We can pray for the strength to keep focused on that conclusion for my life. Chudamani, can you eat food, drink water, and conduct other such activities with a Yavana who is truly become a Vaishnava? Vaishnava does. A renounced Vaishnava who is indifferent to all social restrictions is known as Nirpeksha, without any needs or requirements, and he can honor Mahaprasad with such a Vaishnava. A Grihastha Vaishnava cannot sit and eat with him in the context of ordinary social or family dealings, but there is no such objection when it comes to honoring Vishnu or Vishnu Prasad. In fact, it is his duty. Very deep for Chudamani to listen to this. Very hard for him to struggle with this. Chudamani, then why is it that Yavana Vaishnavas are not permitted to worship and serve the deities in the Vaishnava temples? He's kind of going over it again and again. Vaishnava does. It is an offense to refer to a Vaishnava as a Yavana. We don't think of Haridas Thakur as a Yavana. We know he's from that birth, but he's Namacharya. We refer to him that. That's who we think of him as. Vaishnava as a Yavana, simply because he has taken birth in such a family. All Vaishnavas have the right to serve Krishna. If a Grihastha Vaishnava serves the deity in a way that breaks the rules of Varnashram, it is considered to be a fault from the worldly point of view. Nirapaksha Vaishnavas are not required to worship the deity because that would hinder their quality of being free from all external requirements and dependence. Nirapikshekta. They remain engaged in serving Sri Radha Vallabha through service carried out by the internally conceived spiritual form, Manasi Seva. The internally conceived spiritual form. That always has struck me as a very important understanding. The internally spiritual form. What is the nature of our internal spiritual form? When we read so many um, pastimes about, like with Vilap Kusumanjali, or this Prem Samput, etc. So many Radha Sudhanidhi, then there's a demonstration of the nature of the spiritual form and their activities. So we start to relate to that. We don't imagine that we're in that state until Guru, by his mercy, makes it very clear. But otherwise, we should be hearing about and considering the identity of my spiritually conceived of body. Don't just blanket and gloss it and think it's too far away. We should make this consideration. Chudamani, I understand. Now please tell me what you think about the Brahmanas. So we'll leave this question till tomorrow and discuss that tomorrow. So many, many things in this, and I know that I've only brought out and touched on a very few points. There are so many more points, as I said yesterday, for our own introspection and absorption in these matters when we read alone these Shastras. Don't ever think that we're without the company of Vaishnavas when you have a Jaiva Dharma. When you have a Jaiva Dharma, it's like Bhaktivinoda Thakur is talking to us. He's directly guiding us through so many different understandings of the Vyavaharic, the material life, and the Paramatic, the spiritual aspiration. So everything is here from top to bottom. So we are most blessed to have the association of this granta constantly. Jaiva Dharma ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Now we come to the conclusion of our 6th chapter, which has been quite phenomenal, with so many questions put by Chudamani about the distinction between the Yavanas, the Muslims, and the Hindus. It's a very pertinent chapter with many special teachings to imbibe. How we need to know how to present this to the public ourselves. So for our own education, we need to have these answers very clearly given to us that Vaishnava Das is giving to Chudamani, and see and expect these objections that he's giving all the time. Because we discussed yesterday, it seems like why doesn't he understand something so simple when we're talking about paramatic considerations, the transcendental considerations, rather than vyavaharic, the practical material consideration, the social distinction. Of course, there's social distinction there. A Muslim can't marry a Brahmin girl. Don't try and upset the cart. Don't. A Westerner, for example, is an Antija. Don't try to go into the Jagannath temple. Respect the etiquette. Rupa Goswami never went in. Sanatana Goswami never went in. We're in good company. Haridas Thakur never went in. But we have Tota Gopinath. So don't ever try to think, oh, I'm a devotee. You're always going to be in the body of an Antyaja, not in the Varnashram system, always, till you leave your body. So don't try to go that route, because it will just, it's futile. In fact, use this opportunity as being born in the body of an Antyaja to increase your humility. Because as we said so many times, Trinadapi Sunisha, this humility is the backbone. It's the post that the Bhakti Lata Bij will climb on, that is given by our Guru. This seed of Krishna Seva Vasana, that vine has to grow on a pillar, and it only grows on the pillar of humility. So we have the opportunity in the body of Antyajas to always, in every single circumstance, take the humble position. And by that humility, all will be endeared to us. All will be automatically affectionate to us. Whenever we demonstrate humility, my dear friend Bhaktivedanta Padmanabhan Maharaj often tells a story in Calcutta They were distributing back to Godheads and magazines on the street. They had a blanket on the street in Calcutta. And a rickshaw driver, he ran a rickshaw. He ran over the cover of the books. And the devotees became very irritated with this. And the rickshaw driver, viewing these were just Videshis, Westerners, began to shout vehemently back. And of course, immediately there was a crowd of a few thousand people came around. You know, what sort of confrontation is this between the Hindus and the Videshis? And it escalated practically out of control because the devotees were very indignant because he had ridden across, with his wheel from his cycle rickshaw across one of the Bhakta Godheads. So naturally, they were disturbed about this. And then Padmanabh Maharaj described he went to touch the feet of this rickshaw driver, and instantly the whole atmosphere just diffused. Instantly. This is the power of humility in any confrontational problem. We just go to the place of humility, and this will always 1,000,000% melt the heart of that person who's been antagonized. It can't be otherwise. It is a human being. So in this case, everyone was apologizing, and the rickshaw driver was apologizing, and so on, and everyone was satisfied at the end because of this one act. But we always, in the heat of the moment, we have to remember that. In the heat of the moment, very often our material pride gets the better of us. And when that pride is like venomous snake, it can just eclipse our better consciousness completely. So we see Chudamani. He's excessively, carrying this pride. And Vaishnav Das, in contrast, has no pride, even though he's been spoken to most harshly and impudently by this Chudamani. Still, he's maintaining. And that, in the end, will endear the hearts. It's not just what he says. There's an expression in English, we say, we don't care how much you know until we know how much you care. It's like the personal connection makes more difference than the gyan in many instances. Nevertheless, these incredible teachings are here. So I'm not sure where we stopped at yesterday. I think we came to the bottom of page 120, where it's saying, Chudamani is saying, Sudras are not eligible to study the Vedas. So can a Sudra study the Vedas when he becomes a Vaishnava? So traditionally, all of these scriptures was enshrined in Sanskrit. This would eliminate any Sudra ever approaching them because he wouldn't have the opportunity to study Sanskrit. So it was automatically locked off. But then Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur began to translate these, and certainly Bhaktivinoda Thakur put it in the Bengali vernacular and began to distribute all of his bhajans and songs. They're all in Bengali for the general people. So this storehouse was opened up. But previously it was really encased in the Sanskrit language. So how could a Muslim have access to that? Vaishnava does. From the absolute point of view, when one becomes a pure Vaishnava, he automatically attains the status of a Brahmana, whatever caste one may belong to. That means if we are practicing pure Vaishnava principles and we feel that we've made some progress on this path, then we should act as Brahmanas. And what is the first quality of a Brahmana? Forgiveness. That's the first quality. So the Brahmana Vaishnavas, if they've imbibed that quality, then they should be constantly in a mood of forgiving any apparent transgression against them. And then there will be harmony throughout the Vaishnava community. But we're not seeing that, unfortunately, sadly, because it's the age of Kali and everything is polluted and so much, there's so much agitation It's almost like the conditioned souls are just looking for some type of excuse to vent their anger because there's so much suffering and the pollution and the polluted consciousness. A lot to do with coming from these cell phones, etc. It speeds the mind up. It's almost like time becomes crunched, if we can imagine that. It's like rather than time being open and flowing, it becomes like really, really tight. We have so many things to do. We have such a busy day, so many details to attend to. We practically have no time for proper relationships, even. Everything becomes scrambled and crunched. This is the condition in the conditioned souls. This is what they have to endure. So, but we should consider this sentence that one automatically attains the state of a Brahman, whatever caste he may belong to. The Vedas are divided into two sections: instructions regarding karma, the performance of prescribed duties, and instructions regarding tattva, the absolute truth. These instructions are coming like Gyan Tattva, we can say. Yes, these points of what is true Gyan, Tat Padartha Gyan, Tvam Padartha Gyan. Those who are qualified as Brahmanas in a worldly sense are eligible to study the Vedas that promote karma, and those who are Brahmanas by spiritual qualification are qualified to study the Vedas that promote tattva. So there's two distinctions here. The Muslim is not going to study karma in the worldly sense because he won't be able to enter that world socially. Socially, he's ostracized. He's a Muslim, just like Haridas Thakur. Pure Vaishnavas can study and teach the Vedas that promote spiritual truth, no matter what caste they are born into, and it is practically observed that they do so. It is said in the Brihat Aranyaka Upanishad,
तम एव धीरो विज्ञानं प्रज्ञं कुर्वित ब्राह्मणः.
a Brahmana is a sober and spiritually enlightened person who clearly knows Parabrahm and serves him through Prema Bhakti, which is a manifestation of the highest knowledge. So it's our duty to understand Tattva. It is also said in the Brihat Aranyaka Upanishad 3.8.10,
यो वा एतद् अक्षरं गार्गी अविदित्वस्माल् लोकात् प्रयति स कृपणः. अतः ये एतद् अक्षरं गार्गी विदित्वस्माल् लोकात् प्रयति स ब्राह्मणः.
O Gagi, he who quits this world, Gagi is the wife of Gargacharya. O Gagi, he who quits this world is without knowing he who quits this world without knowing the supreme imperishable being, Sri Vishnu, is a wretched miser, whereas he who quits this world knowing the supreme being is recognized as a Brahmana. Very beautiful. Manu has said the following in regard to those who are Brahmanas by vyavaharik or social considerations. This is important.
यो नान्दयति द्विजो वेदम् अन्यत्र कुरुते श्रमं स जीवनम् एव शूद्रत्वम् असो गच्छति सान्व्यः.
Manu is the father of mankind. From Swayambhuva Manu, then Likshvaku Manu. Huh?
The son of Brahma.
Son of Lord Brahma. A Brahmana, Kshatriya, or Vaishnava becomes twice born by investiture with the sacred thread, and this prepares him for studying the Vedas. If a Dvija fails to study the Vedas after receiving the sacred thread, and instead studies other subjects such as science, economics, or logic, he and his family members quickly become degraded in this very life to the status of Sudras. How often do we see this? Very intelligent, Brahmanically qualified people, they open up schools and they start to teach. And they're teaching what? Economic development. They're anxious to actually acquire money, lusty, yes, and drink at the same time. Shvetashvarta Upanishad 6.23 explains the eligibility to study the Vedas that promote spiritual truth.
यस्य देवे परा भक्तिर् यथा देवे तथा गुरौ तस्य ता कथिता हि अर्थात् प्रकाशान्त महात्मनः.
All the confidential truths described in this Upanishad will be revealed to that great soul who has the same exclusive, uninterrupted, transcendental devotion, parabhakta, for his guru that he has for Bhagavan. This is the Avaroha Panta. With our connection with Guru, all of these truths will be enlightened within the heart. And the great example is Sankaracharya's servant, who apparently, shastrically, didn't appear to be so erudite or anything like that. He would wash Sankaracharya's cloth, etc., and do all the menial tasks. And one day they were having an assembly, and Sankaracharya was waiting to begin his discourse, and the devotees, thousands of devotees, were asking, "Why are you waiting?" And he said, "Oh, we're waiting for my sevak to come." And they said, "What do you care for him? You know, he doesn't know anything. What will you speaking the Shastras in front of him?" But then when his sevak came, Sankaracharya instructed his sevak to start speaking on the topics that they were discussing. And he spoke to astonish the whole assembly that he was so erudite, he was so tattvavit, because all the mercy was coming from Sankaracharya straight into his heart. I've experienced this directly with my Gurudev, standing in front of him and being asked to speak on a topic and not really being sure of the topic, and looking at Gurudev and begging for his mercy to be able to speak about it, and somehow the remembrance of all of that, what was needed to satisfy my Gurudev in any saying something, came. So Guru will do like this. The word para bhakti in the above shloka means Shuddha bhakti, pure bhakti. I don't want to elaborate any further on this topic. You should try to understand it yourself. He said enough. Basically, he said everything to him. If Chudamani can't understand all that he said now, then he's just going to begin challenging on small points, trying to find some, because he's envious, because pride and envy are synonymous. Wherever there's pride, there's envy. Pride can only exist because of envy. I become proud because I think I'm better than somebody else. That's envy. When I have that comparison with someone else, that pride. I don't want to elaborate any further on this topic. You should try to understand it yourself. In short, those who have faith in Ananya Bhakti are eligible to study the Vedas that promote tattva, spiritual truth, and those who have already attained Ananya Bhakti are eligible to teach those Vedas. That means even a Muslim, if they've studied those Shastras, like Haridas Thakur. We read Harinam Chintamani. Mahaprabhu made an example of this. He made Haridas Thakur speak the glories of the holy name. He asked him all the different questions, and Haridas Thakur was answering in such a most beautiful way. We revere this book so much, this Harinam Chintamani, coming from the lotus-like mouth of Haridas Thakur through the prompting of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chudamani, then do you people conclude that the Vedas that promote tattva teach only Vaishnava Dharma and no other religion? Vaishnav Das, Dharma is one, not two, and it is also known as Nitya-dharma or Vaishnava Dharma. All other forms of Naimitic Dharma taught in the Vedas are simply steps leading to that eternal religion. Sri Bhagavan has said,
कालेन नाष्टप्रलये वाणीयं वेद समञ्जितः मायादु ब्राह्मणे प्रोक्तधर्मो यस्यां मद आत्मका.
Srimad Bhagavatam 11:14. Sri Bhagavan said, the Vedas contain, this is speaking to Uddhav, the Vedas contain instructions on Bhagavat Dharma. At the time of annihilation, that message was lost by the influence of time. Then at the beginning of the next creation, known as Brahmakalpa, I again spoke the same Vedic message to Brahmaji. The Katha Upanishad 139 states,
सर्वे वेदा यत्पदम् अमन्नान्ति तत्ते पदं सङ्ग्रेण भ्रमिविमि तद्विष्णु परमं पदं सदा.
I shall now describe to you in brief that ultimate truth that all the Vedas have repeatedly described as the supreme object of attainment. That abode of Vishnu, the all-pervading Paramatma Vasudeva, is the only supreme destination. By this point in the discussion, the faces of Devi Vidyaratna and his associates looked pale and withered, and the teacher's enthusiasm was shattered. It was nearly 5 o'clock in the afternoon, so everyone agreed to adjourn the day's discussion, and the meeting ended. The Brahmin Pandits departed enthusiastically, praising the scholarship of Vaishnava Das, because they can recognize scholarship because they're scholars themselves. They are Vaishnava scholars. We said from the, not Vaishnava scholars, rather Brahmin scholars. We said from the very beginning, they're Nyaya scholar. They know the consciousness of a scholar, and they could appreciate Vaishnava Das's scholarly presentation. The Brahmin Pandits departed enthusiastically, praising the scholarship of Vaishnava Das, and the Vaishnavas left for their respective places, loudly chanting the names of Hari. Here again it's saying, I've commented before, they went to their places, they didn't go to their homes. They went to their places. So this is the end of this chapter. So I'm just going to read, I'm not going to start the next chapter until Monday. We can discuss that on Monday. We'll start that on Monday. So we'll conclude this chapter now. But we can just refresh something and appreciate the many questions that were posed to Vaishnava Das. For example, on page 117, Chudamani becomes embarrassed when he's confronted with the speciality of Mahaprasad. He reveals to us he has no faith. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is making this making Chudamani a typical example of an educated Brahmin, a scholar Brahmin. He becomes so much enamored by his own gyan and prowess because knowledge is a very powerful tool. And this Chudamani has been described as giving lectures all over India, etc. He's used to people coming and touching his feet and honoring him and so on like that. So he's very inflated. This is what happens when no purity is there or hunger for the absolute truth. But when a sense of material satisfaction comes in this world, the conception that I am good, I am a scholar, and when this consciousness pervades, then it's very hard to have faith in objects like Mahaprasad, for example, because his absolute nishta in transcendence is not there. We have to understand this path for our own appreciation, that unless the inconceivable consciousness is woken up in the heart of the Vaishnava, having that consciousness like a child has. A child has that achintya bhav, that mood of inconceivable wonder. A small child is like that. So unless we have this wonderment, then we're not going to move forward in our relationship with Krishna. Everything will become as if I know everything in advance. But we don't know everything in advance. If we're of that impression that I know everything in advance, all the doors will be closed, because you will never ever have that achintya bhav of wonder. Wow, that was incredible. Wow, did you see that? Did you hear that? That kind of mood of absolute astonishment is what carries us forward into this path of Rag Marg, because we don't know the truth. We don't know the speciality of Radha and Krishna's meeting. We're in process of unpacking that tattvically to begin with, and then trying to relish it internally by the potency of the mercy from Guru and our practice, our sadhan bhajan. So it's all in process. But if that achintya, if that astonishing mood is not there, we said in that verse from the Falshruti, remember, I think it was verse 4, when it says, thus he rejects Bhagavan's ivichrata, astonishing characteristics, paraphernalia qualities, and lila. He rejects them because he can't conceive of the astonishing truth. So Chudamani is of that nature, and it's a great tragedy. So Chudamani, Vaishnavadas is trying to enlighten him. So he asks this question. He says, what is the proper behavior between the Yavanas and you people? So the whole chapter is more or less showing that there are two considerations all the way through. Have that completely fixed. There's the vyavaharic, the social, practical, societal consideration in every instance. And then there's the paramatic, which is the true transcendental consideration. On the transcendental consideration, then the Muslim or the Antyaja can be on the same level as the Vaishnavas. The Antyaja can join the Vaishnavas in chanting Harinam. If the Antyaja himself has become purified by the chanting, then he will be most welcomed into any Vaishnava assembly. But if the Antyaja is carrying some social distinction himself, if he's not seeing himself as a pure spirit soul in relationship to, for example, the Brahmins and the Indian Varnashram born souls, then there's going to be some obstruction there in the relationships. So for Antyajas hearing this, for those not in the Varnashram system, this chapter is packed with very, very powerful considerations for our reflection. We are all essentially Jivera Saruphoy Krishnera Nitya-das. We all are all ultimately servants of the Supreme Lord. And when we discover that, we realize that all souls are Jivera Saruphoy Krishnera Nitya. All souls by nature are servants of the Supreme Lord, all manifesting from the one supreme Master, Sri Brajendranandan Shyam Sundar, through his various potencies, etc. So we can appreciate all of these teachings in this 6th chapter are monumental, really, really powerful to consider. So now we've reached the 7th chapter, and we can recap somewhat and appreciate the threads that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is weaving from the very beginning, the threads of sadhu sangha initially. Initially, this principal limb of bhakti, sadhu sangha, and then nam kirtan is constantly reiterated through all the chapters prominently. And then Bhagavat Dharma, this Bhagavat appreciation, Shastra, is prominently displayed in every single chapter. We can sit with the different chapters and we can pick this current, these golden threads that our Bhaktivinoda Thakur has woven through. And then, what's that? Srimathura Vas. I described before, the whole backdrop of this Jaiva Dharma is Navadvip Dham, is Godrum Dvip. And interestingly, when it comes to the Rasa Tattva section, we move to Jagannath Puri. Why? Because in Jagannath Puri, this is where Mahaprabhu tasted these highest moods of Vipralambha in the Gambhira. So we move to be in that Dharma, considering those truths at that time in Jagannath Puri. So the whole Dharma is woven in to the backdrop. And then Sri Mutaya Sevaya, or is it Srimutaya Shraddha Sevaya? That's serving the deity with full faith. And this consideration is brought up many, many times in these chapters. That how does the deity manifest? Bhaktivinoda Thakur has explained through the pure heart of that Vaishnava, when he has that vision of the Thakurji, then either himself or he's instructing someone how to actually, because we see all of the murtis, so many murtis are just absolutely astonishing. And if you pray to many of the murtis who have been worshipped by Mahaprabhu's parikars in particular, because I'm here now, but if we're in Vrindavan, who have been worshipped by the Goswamis, etc., like Radha Govindaji. Radha Govindaji is absolutely adored in Jaipur today because Radha Govindaji is manifested, was found by Srila Rupa Goswami, who actually established the worship of Radha Govindaji. And then there's Madan Mohan, established by Sanatan Goswami. So these deities are just, who's in Karoli, not in Jaipur, on the way to Jaipur. And these deities are just astonishing to be in the presence of and to realize how much devotion they've received from their sevaks. And it's exuding out of them. So this is also described, this thread, these 5 principles. And then, of course, we can go to the 9 limbs of bhakti: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Anivan. These 9 limbs of bhakti are constantly resonating through these pages. So I'm just picking this one example. We can pick other examples of the golden threads, so to speak, that are being woven by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And the fascinating pastime that he's weaving also. He knows that the people of Kali Yuga love a good story. Everyone loves a good story. The Mahabharata, the Ramayana are so appealing to people. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his excellence, has crafted this scripture with so many incredible characters. Like Chudamani is an incredible character. Vaishnava Das is an incredible character. Devi Das also is they're all specific personalities built into the embodiment of these persons to represent a state of consciousness in the world. We can see like that. They're given form. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is completely astonishing. Filled with achintya bhav. This Jaiva Dharma is filled with that astonishment that the sadhak experiences when he hears these different revelations so explicitly and clearly revealed. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Jaiva Dharma ki jai. Chapter 7 will begin on Monday. And tomorrow, Sunday, is the disappearance day of Srila Jiva Goswami Pad, just for your remembrance. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Go to Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.